Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 137 of Discourse in Magic with Carisa Hendrix. Now, this was a really deep episode. We got into a whole bunch of things. You can probably tell if you looked that this episode is over 2 hours long, and that's because we spoke about everything. We spoke about art, we spoke about women in magic, we spoke about sideshow, we spoke about identity, we spoke about the it factor. We spoke about so many different aspects of magic right now, and it had so many important conversations in it. So it's one that I hope that you listen to. You might have to listen to it in two parts because it's longer than usual, but I can assure you it's packed full of a lot of things that you're going to want to put in the back or front of your brain that's going to help you become a better performer. Straight up, that's what we spoke about during the bulk of the episode, is becoming a better performer and sometimes becoming a better person. So here it is, an amazing episode with the wonderful Carisa Hendrix. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah, and I am here with a very special guest. This is someone who not only was I interested in having on, but also it was someone who was one of the recommended people that comes at the end of the episodes, and it was recommended by Kayla and Kayla Drescher. And not only was her episode amazing, but the two of them have an incredible, cool podcast together. I'm honestly raving about all the things about this person, but she's won awards, she's a model, she's an actress, she's an incredible magician, and she's talking to me from the 654 Club at the Chicago Magic Lounge. We're here with the incredible Carisa Hendrix. Carisa, how are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. That was such a sweet intro.
Oh, I'm super excited to have you on and excited to talk about magic and a few other things. So we have so much to talk about, but let's start at the very beginning, which is, how did you get into magic? How did you get started?
So this is such a weird question for me to answer because I feel like everyone has this super concise story. My
Mm-hmm.
grandpa showed me a trick, and I was like, "Yeah," or my uncle, or I went to a magic club. And for me, I have this sort of messy story of being a kid and seeing Max Maven on TV because he used to do this. He did this TV show called Maximum Dimension that only aired in Canada. It was like an after-school special for kids in Canada,
Wow.
and
By
I
the way, I'm based in Toronto, so
oh, awesome.
hypothetically I would know what you're talking about, but I don't know what you're
You
talking
don't know
about.
it. There's some, like, secret episodes online, and the funny thing is that I had forgotten about it and I was always like, "Oh, Max Maven's the best,"
Yeah.
I always loved him, and then I was talking to Joe Diamond, and he goes, "Have you seen this show Max did, Maximum Dimension?" I'm like, "No, send it to me. I bet it's crazy." And I'm watching this episode, and I go, "Oh my god, I know
This was
everything.
it. Yeah.
This is" and it just all came flooding back. And so there's this introduction to magic through Max Maven, and it's this sort of sci-fi magic show. Which once you see my character now, you're like, oh yeah, that was very influenced. And but there was no secondary outlet. Like I didn't know any other kids who liked magic, and there was nothing in my family. It was just me doing card tricks for my parents and for the kids at school. And so there's only so much you can do when you don't have access to the literature and there's nobody else doing it. I was the only magician I knew until I turned 16. And then about that age I got kicked out of the house. And that summer I had learned to juggle and eat fire and walk on broken glass. So I got this job at this carnival, at this haunted house, doing 5 shows a night for 20 nights. And so you get kind of this relationship with show business, this like, oh, I guess I work all the time. I guess this is just what show business is. You do
Yeah.
1,000 5-minute sets, you work yourself silly. And
Right.
I got okay. I got passable quite quickly because,
You just do in that many hours.
you're just doing, yeah, like
Yeah.
immediately at 16, I'm getting
Yeah.
tons of hours. And then I picked up a small Christmas season, and all of a sudden I started working with these other magicians as a magician's assistant because I had a dance background as well. And then I started working on stuff with them, and then they needed time to change. So then I wrote a routine. And then I left magic. I went and did sideshow, and I went and did an arts degree, a visual art degree, and I did this other stuff. And it wasn't until I was 25 and I had won a Guinness World Record and I'd done this whole thing and I'd had this whole established career. And I was looking down the barrel of the rest of my life in sideshow and circus. And just sort of in that moment was like, I don't I didn't decide this. I didn't pick this. This just happened. This was just me taking the next gig and the next gig and the next gig. If I picked this, it would be magic. And so
Why? Why do you feel that way? What's the big separation between the two? Does it have to do with the community or the show or the feeling or what?
with Sideshow, I found myself focusing on the theater of it and the artistry and, really trying to squeeze every ounce out of a dramatic moment. But I don't love Sideshow. Magic makes me wanna cry. I
Mhm.
feel so passionate about the importance of magic in our culture, and I was just in Mexico, and there was Mexico loves magic. Anytime anybody found out I was a magician, I immediately had a crowd of people to perform for, whether I wanted to or not,
Mhm.
and it was also, Day of the Dead, so I think there was also this sort of essence of magic, and, I did this, like, accidental show, and this one gentleman is asking me if magic is real. And the best way I could put it to him was that the feeling of magic is real, but it's elusive. The feeling of magic, when you see something, when you see a sunrise, or when you see something that feels like magic, or you're talking to someone and they just say the right thing, that feels like magic, and that is very elusive. And my job as an artist is to create environments that make you feel that way at will. And
Mhm.
it that making art that way is so much more exciting and so much more relevant to me in a way that I just couldn't get quite as excited about Sideshow. So at 25, I kind of like put that show in a box and started over and started with no material and no idea of what I was doing. And I'm only 31 now, so that was only 6 years ago. And I just completely gave myself over to magic. And it doesn't mean I wasn't still doing my show to pay the bills, but I stopped writing it. I only learned new magic skills. I only wrote for magic. I really focused. So I don't feel like that's like a concise story, and I love concise stories. And so when people that's the truth. That's the truth is that like I got into magic
Right.
and I got out of magic and I got into magic and got out of magic and now I'm here and I'm never leaving. But the story I tell, if you're interested, is not that one. The story I tell is, I my relationship with magic has come and gone, and it took a while for it to really seduce me and for me to feel like I really belonged here. But there was a moment when I felt like a magician. The first time I felt like the word magician described me, which was at 22. And I was touring with these other two performers. I used to be a street performer, and I was touring with Dantastic from New Zealand and Jimbo Jordan out of Calgary, cups and balls guy and a contortionist. And we had been seeing each other's shows, and we'd seen each other's shows 1,000 times. And we were watching Dan do the show. And halfway through the show, he looks out into the audience and goes, "All of you, I hate you. You're the worst. Your face is dumb." And it was out of nowhere. He'd never done it before. And the whole audience stared back at him like he was crazy. And then he goes, "Wonderful. Now I have alienated each and every one of you. I get the joy and pleasure of winning you back." And it was so fun. And so for the rest of the tour, the "your face is dumb" thing became this battle
Yeah.
cry. We were scrolling it on bathroom stalls, we were
Right.
signing checks with it, we were, like, screaming at each other across the bar, it was just the thing. So, Dan is not a magician. Jimbo and I are magicians. But Dan had this one card trick. He had Colossal Killer in his wallet.
Mm.
And he would do it all the time, and I find that trick kind of annoying because I don't think it's that good of a trick, and so if you don't I'm sorry if you do it, I apologize, but if you don't know, the trick is basically somebody can name any card, you pull out a card from your wallet, and they go, "Oh, it's the wrong card," and you go, "Yeah, that's right, 'cause it's on the back, it says off by 1," which I just think is like, if you're a why doesn't shouldn't it just be the right card? There's better
Yeah.
tricks. It's fine, it's just a personal preference thing. But I think it's also the fact that Dan annoyed me with this trick so much because he did it all the time. So we're driving across Canada. We drop off Dan in Vancouver, and Jimbo and I start driving back to Calgary. 4 hours into our drive, we get this panicked phone call from Dan. He's left his wallet in the car. We get out of the car and we realize we don't have the 8 hours to drive back to Vancouver and then get back on the highway to go to Calgary. We're going to miss our gig. So we decide, okay, Dan's got his passport. He's going to fly to New Zealand. He has enough money from doing his last street show. He'll be okay. And we will FedEx overnight his wallet back to New Zealand. So we get in the car. we're driving, and that's, I mean, Calgary and Vancouver are far apart.
Oh,
So
yes.
I'm like another 2 hours into this drive, and I get bored. So I open up Dan's wallet, and I find Colossal Killer, and I go, Jimbo, you got a deck of cards. So I line all the cards up on the dash. On the back of each card, I write, your face is dumb. I meticulously take
Oh,
the cards and
that's
switch them
great.
in the wallet. I pack it back up, and I mail it to New Zealand, and I don't think about it again. And here's the rest of the story as Dan tells it. Dan walks into a FedEx location in New Zealand, and behind the desk is what he described as the most beautiful woman he has ever seen. He walks up to her. He's flirting with her. He says, oh, I'm a contortionist. She goes, no reaction. I'm a juggler. No reaction. I'm a magician. She goes, I love magic. And he realizes she is holding a sealed FedEx envelope with his wallet with a trick in it. So he leans into her and puts his fist onto his chin and goes, name any card. She names
man.
2 of diamonds. That's amazing. Because while I was in Canada, where I am a very famous street performer, I had a dream about you. And you picked a card. And you said, put it in my wallet so that I would know that this was meant to be. So she opens the seal, and he's milking this for all it's worth, because he's like, I'm about to do a miracle. Opens it, has her reach inside, opens the wallet, pulls out the 3 of diamonds, and she goes, that's not my card. He goes, that's right, because you had me right on the back. And he looks over the card, and on the back, staring back at him, it just says, your face is dumb.
Oh, man.
So he looks back at her and goes, never mind. Puts the card back in the wallet, puts the wallet in his pocket, walks out into the street, and immediately calls us. And we pick up the phone. He's mid-scream.
Weeping.
Ah!
I'm sure he's weeping. Oh, my gosh.
And in that moment, I was like, oh, I am a magician. I really did feel like, oh, I know magic well enough that I mess with somebody on a different continent.
So
Yes.
I have 2 different stories that relate to that. So first is sort of a micro version of that feeling, which is I do a trick where I just basically am forcing people the same card over and over again. And there's a beautiful moment where they've grabbed the card from the middle quite a few times, and now I do something, and it makes it look like the card goes in the middle, and then I spread the cards out and I say, take a card out, but really mess with me. Like really, really try to mess with me. And about half the time they look at me dead in the face, they get a big smirk on their face, and they pull the top card off the deck, and they turn over, and that's obviously the one that that's where I put it, in hoping that they would do that to mess with me. And like, that's exactly the same thing. It's a moment that makes me be like, yes! Like, it just a full, yeah. So the other story is a little bit of a magic prank, which I'll tell you, and this is a prank for everybody who's listening to this, which is something that I didn't hear, but it's almost become a famous funny story in Toronto that Tony Chang did to Bobby Mata. So imagine this: they're at this bar or restaurant or something, and they go up to a table, and he folds up a card, and he goes, Bobby, put it in your mouth quickly. So Bobby puts a card in his mouth. So then Tony goes, okay, pick a card. And then he shuffles the deck, and then he's like spreading the deck on the table, and he goes, you picked a card somewhere inside the deck. And then he kicks Bobby under the table. So Bobby starts like, like coughing and coughing. And then he like, really dramatically, then he spits out a card on the table, and then he unfolds it. And Tony's like, ew, gross. What's that? And it's just some random card. And he's like, what are you doing? And then he just keeps doing his trick. And to me, that's such a funny prank. It reminds me of that, right? Like,
man,
the guy's just sitting there ready with a card in his mouth, and then he dramatically spits it out. Anyways, I just thought I'd tell that story.
There's no way I'm not doing that.
I know. I thought I would share it. I thought you'd enjoy that. So you just go, here, quick, put this in your mouth, quick.
Oh no, I'm at the lounge all week. I'm totally gonna do that.
I know, it's such a good prank. Anyways, so first of all, I love that, and I love that there was a moment that you felt like you were a magician, and it kind of feels like a prank, but it still feels like that gotcha, that knowing what someone's gonna do, that completing the full circle. It's a magic trick, right? Like, that's the biggest trick that there could be. So walk us through. So you went from that, where you felt like you went from feeling like you were more in sideshow to now feeling like you were more in magic because of, I guess, that moment, and then some things that came after that. But walk us through the journey. So what happened there? How did that translate into what's now what looks like quite a thriving career in magic?
So that's about 22. And after that, I started touring these bar shows. So I've been street performing a little bit, and then I got this really nice inn with a couple of little like casino bars and a couple little bars in northern Saskatchewan and northern Alberta, and I started doing these shows. And meanwhile, I'm doing like close up magic on the side. And if I don't have a big enough room, I do close up magic. But I'm mostly doing sideshow. I thought of myself as I was calling myself a stunt girl. I was billing myself as a stunt girl. I was doing all these like elaborate stunts. And at about 24, I had, it would have been 25. So I did that for a couple of years. I had just won my world record. And I was doing the bar tour, and this woman comes up to me to give me my check. And she goes to hand it to me, and then she immediately pulls it away, like a gotcha. And she goes, "Hey, before I give you this, can I just give you a piece of advice?" And I went, "Yeah, of course." I mean, and she goes, so we had a magician here last week, and we really try not to hire the same act, in a row. So we hired you because we wanted a stunt show. And the magic you did was amazing. It was a great show. We loved it. Everybody had a good time. But, if it's going to be a magic show, you should bill it as a magic show so that I, as an entertainment director, know what I'm getting. And I went, yeah, no problem. Sorry about that. She goes, yeah, no, it's no problem. It's all good. She gives me my check. She walks away. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? It's a stunt show. I ate fire. I walked on broken glass. I electrocuted oh, wait. Then I did a razor blade swallow. Oh, and then I
Right.
did card trick. And then I did finger chopper. And then, oh my goodness, I'm a magician.
Right.
I like my like
You make that sound
magic
like a
had
bad
been
thing.
like a weed growing into my sideshow and had been pushing out all of the stunts. And that was another moment where it was just like, okay, I clearly love magic and I clearly like sideshow. And this is all I'm ever going to do. So I can start over now or I can start over in 10 years. I'll just start over now. When you realize that you're not working deliberately.
Right.
So I've had a solo show for a long time, and the poison of doing solo shows and of working in weird environments is that you can really do whatever you want. And I kind
Mm-hmm.
of invented the bar market I was working in. Not that bar shows
Mm-hmm.
aren't a thing, but like there was no tour, there was no
Right.
circuit. I just called all these bars and booked these shows because I loved street performing and I liked my street show, but I didn't like it enough to make it a better street show. I wanted to do different work for better money, and I wanted to know there was a paycheck. Street is really scary, and I don't really have the constitution for it. So what ends up happening is you're by yourself a lot. And so things just evolve. They just mutate slowly. And there were so many times when I would show up to do these bar shows and there were 6 people. So I would just do a close-up set. And you don't realize you have enough material to do a close-up set until
Until you have to.
you have to.
Right.
Exactly. So it wasn't like a realization where I went, oh, I'm a magician. Shoot. It was more that thing of, this thing is calling me. This thing
Mm-hmm.
is happening whether I want it to or not.
And do you find yourself having to sort of draw an imaginary line in the sand? Because one thing that I'm struggling with personally is there's maybe an aspect of my character or who I am that I don't like. So I start asking myself, like, do I just draw a line in the sand and say stop being that and be a different person, or is it a slow and gradual, so do you draw a line and say I'm no longer sideshow, I'm now a magician, stop lying to yourself, Carissa, or do you say, like, now I'm a magician, and if I want to do some sideshow stuff, I'm welcome to. It's in my blood. It's who I am. But I am now more billed as a magician and let the sideshow stuff bleed through.
I try not to ever turn away from anything, to burn any bridges, because the lines that exist between genres I think of as much more artificial than I think a lot of people do. So for me, the line between
Right.
sideshow and magic is not that strong. I just
I
did
agree.
my first like proper full close up show at the Magic Bar in LA
Oh,
last
amazing.
week, Monday, Tuesday, 4 shows. And because it was right around Halloween, just before Halloween, I decided to start with stunts and then move into magic as part of it. Also because the stunts I do are well rehearsed, and so I
Mm-hmm.
could start with like really strong material and then do the magic tricks that uh, they're less vetted. They're really strong magic, but it's just stuff I've done less. So, and I felt like that show was fine. It showed different parts of who I am. They were well integrated. I talked about how sideshow is partially magic because some things are real. Sword swallowing is real, and some things are magic. Man eating chicken? Man eating chicken is not a thing. A man eating chicken stunt is and we did this in our 10 and 1 for years. You gather people in front of the tent. You talk about this man eating chicken and how ferocious it is. You get them really excited. You open the curtains, and it's always a fat guy eating KFC. Always.
Right.
And it's a magic trick because you set up an expectation of what they think reality is, and then you show them that their expectations are false. That's exactly a magic trick. So I talked about that in the show, and it was fine. It was less like, no more sideshow, no more, no more. It was more about saying yes to things.
Right.
And for me, I hear what you're saying about how there's aspects of your personality that maybe you're trying to move away from, but it takes so much more effort to unlearn something negative than it does to move towards something you love. So whenever I see somebody that's working in a problem that you're working in, where you're like, there's this thing I do or this aspect of my personality I don't like, that hyper focusing on that can be really exhausting and challenging. It's sometimes, not all the time, but often more valuable to hyper focus on what you do really well and just grow towards that. And often you'll leave the garbage on the back end anyway, automatically.
Right. I like that. And I think that the thing that really sticks out there is not to make arbitrary lines in the sand,
Mm-hmm.
because you end up really, one thing I always joked about with some friends of mine is when someone's like, I'm a magician, I'm not a mentalist.
Ugh.
Or like, I'm a mentalist, I'm not a magician. And it's like, I mean, lay people don't know what that means. So you're surely making it confusing, right? Like that, I mean, it doesn't mean anything. Like, so you read someone's mind one day and then the next day you make things teleport. Like, I don't know. They're both made up. Like, what are you talking about? So I like that. I like just, not drawing lines in the sand for the sake of, where you are developmentally and thinking that that's the ladder to climb, but instead to just, more like you're skiing down a hill and you just start leaning in the right direction and then leaning in the new right direction,
Yeah. Well, skiing's a great
and
analogy. I mean, if you're skiing and you focus on not hitting the tree, you're going to hit the tree because you're focusing on the tree. The goal is to focus on the empty space between the trees. That's how you don't hit them.
Right. That's great. That was a good analogy. So let's move forward a little bit. So you decided that you're doing magic. You decided, or at least that you comfortably identify as a magician, whatever that means. And it's 2018. You can identify as a magician, even if you don't do magic. But you're welcome to it. And then now, talk to me about how that's developed. So now it sounds like right now you're in the back room of the Chicago Magic Lounge. You're just at the LA Magic Bar. You're just in Mexico. So it sounds like magic's really working for you. What has developed from, coming up with your own performing environment, which was that bar and restaurant? And obviously I know that it's not your own, but I see what you mean. I sort of, I came up with my own version of summer camps because I was just like, no one's there. So I started touring that. And then I came up, like, I have a package for summer camps that only I created, right? So I know what you're talking about. And then you all of a sudden open your eyes one more time and say, let's go and play with the big kids over in Magic Land, and not just in bars in the middle of Alberta or whatever, right? So what happened then? How did you start transitioning and start going from identifying as a magician to becoming a real magician?
I was really lucky in Calgary that I had so many established places to be terrible. And I don't think I, until recently, have realized how valuable that is because I've been doing a lot of coaching lately. I coach a lot of people over Skype with their magic. And that is always the thing that people are struggling with. They're just like, I go, well, you gotta just do that 10 times. And they go, where? What do you mean where? Just, you don't
Anywhere,
where?
everywhere.
Everywhere. And
You don't have a
I
where?
don't have a where. And for me in Calgary, because I had already been performing for so long and I'd been performing as a sideshow performer, I'd done burlesque and I had done all these things. I had access to so many venues. I could
Stages,
go to the
yeah.
stand-up club on amateur night and do magic. I could go to the burlesque show and do 5 minutes. They'd let me do whatever. And to this day,
Right.
I can walk into pretty much any burlesque show in Calgary and do 5 minutes if I want. They'll always welcome me. They're so sweet and welcoming and kind. And I mean, yes, I did earn that in a lot of ways, but they don't. It's a two-way street. I worked hard to earn that and respect that and be grateful for it. But also, people didn't have to offer me that in the first place.
Right.
So I had lots and lots of places to be terrible, and I already had this really solid corporate sideshow. So slowly, I started calling it Circus of Magic, and I brought in another act, and he was a juggler, and so he would do juggling, and I would do more magic, and then we would do like an acrobatic act at the end to tie it all together. And then I invested in some illusions because I'd done illusions for years when I got started as a performer. And so I bought some illusions and cleaned them up really nice, and then eventually threw those out and built stuff from scratch because they're just more my style. And like kind of just pieced together the show until I had enough elements that I knew worked to put together like a full hour. And then in the September leading up before that next Christmas.
So I just want to pause because it sounds like you created a boatload of magic routines. So
Really
let's just
fast.
put in perspective, yeah. How many shows were you doing a week, a night? How long were you doing, and how many tricks were you doing on those shows? I want to know, how long did it take you? 30 kicks at a can to develop something? 100, 500? Like, what are we looking at here?
The magic is so weird for me. With sideshow, it was much more reliable. Like it would take 20 shows to really run something in. With magic, it's not unheard of for me to walk on stage with something I've really spent like a week or two writing and have it be really close to perfect right away. So I got really lucky. There was some stuff like my first I did a routine where I was like is like a very much based on Amazing Randy's rope tie, that kind of concept, but sort of a different premise. It was about marriage, there's different things. I wrote that, took it to a burlesque show. It immediately kills. It needed about a week and a half of tweaking, and I was performing it probably once every 2 days. I was finding a new venue to work on it, and after the 2 weeks, it was good. The multiplying bottles routine took me 3 years to get to the point where I didn't hate it. And even now, it is the first routine, even as it's Lucy's. Lucy's cannibalized a lot of my own old material, the character I perform as. Even now, if I have to cut something, the bottles will be the first thing I cut because I'm still not the most in
Mhm.
love with it, even though I'm very proud of it. I don't know that routine will ever be where I'll look at it and go, yeah, that's great. Um, and sometimes you'll love something, and then this book production I created, I did it at the castle. I did it the first couple of days in Australia at the Australian Magic Festival, and then Juan Esteban Varela, the guy who does the magic show for the blind. I was so happy with it. I'm like, oh, it's almost perfect. And he saw it, and he just said one little thing, and I was like, I hate it, like because he was so right. He was all the magic in that show was coming from the same place, and then he pointed out that the magic in that routine was coming from somewhere else. It was very different magic, and the routine just immediately was broken. So it's tough to say because it's so like getting a good show or really writing something. It's such an elusive, magical thing. But taken together, I would say the hour took me about 8 months. It took me 8 months to put together an hour-long show, and I was probably doing magic 4 times a week minimum between corporate shows and just throwing myself on the list for improv nights or whatever. So I had a lot of trial and error time to get that show to the point where it was passable.
Do you think that somebody should use that as a measuring post to say to themselves, like, I should be making more material because that's how much material Carissa made? Do you think that that's not fair because you had so much performing experience before that someone trying to say that right now, like it's like you knowing how I know a whole game works before you're starting to even play it, right? So do you think that that should be something people should compare against? Do you think it should be much harder than that? Do you think it should be easier than that? And then the question to come with that is, what can people do to try to be as prepared as you were?
I would say if you are trying to follow my example, don't ever do that. I love writing material. I love it. I love it desperately. I have only been doing the Lucy character for a year and a half. I already have two 45s. A couple weeks ago, I wrote a brand new hour-long close-up show for the Magic Bar, even though I had material. I didn't have to do that. I love writing. It's my favorite thing. If you don't love writing, if it's tedious, then write enough material to suit your particular individual goals. I think what we don't teach magicians is to define success for themselves. So the first question is, what do you want? What do you want? Do you want to do corporate shows? Okay. Well, then you're probably going to need two 45s because you have to do this 45 this year and a different 45 next year. Do you want to do cruise ships? Probably still need two 45s because you're going to need to be flexible. You're going to need different material. And also maybe a close up show, something just in case nobody shows up. You want to do kids' parties? Again, probably at least two shows. You want to do the castle? You need a really solid 15. That's it. You want to do walk around? You need 3 sets of 3 tricks minimum.
Yeah.
That's it. What do
Never
you
mind
want?
minimum. You could do walk around with 10 tricks, 12 tricks. You could just do walk around for years.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of people do. I mean,
right?
if you do those really, really well and you're very good at table hopping in a way of creating space between the routines, you can do walk around with like 5 good tricks. I think step 1 is define success for yourself. What do you actually want? And be brutal and honest about it. What I want has evolved over the years, and I try to ask myself we reset our prices and we do a big overhaul on my company every March. And right before that, I really sit down and go, okay, what happened this year? Who am I now? What do I want? And I
Right.
try and be really honest about it. And then I ask myself if that's a reasonable thing. And then I work backwards from that to create what I want to create. So I would love for more people to have more material because writing is such an interesting, magic, elusive thing. The more you're writing, the more likely you are to create something exceptional, something really new, something that really catches people, something that is, we have all these things on Penguin that are like, this will be a reputation maker. And I'm like,
Right.
shouldn't the thing you're best known for be something that you
You
created?
created? That's an interesting point.
Like, shouldn't your reputation be based on you?
Or at least let the reputation part, like, even if the trick you didn't create, let the reputation part be the you part of that trick, not the
Absolutely.
trick part of that trick, right?
So I
Let
really
that be
try
the
to motivate
memorable.
people to write more, but I don't think it's worth using any random person as an example for what you want. I think look at what you want, look at who in our market has it, and then ask yourself what they did in
Right.
particular.
Right. What can someone do? Maybe some easy wins that somebody can do if they're like, oh darn, I wish I could create material faster. What are some easy wins or easy approaches that somebody can do before they step on the stage? Even though maybe they don't love writing as much as you do, is there an exercise they can do with writing, an activity, a way that you found it more enjoyable? Is there something that they could do with their act, or ways that they, maybe particular ways to rehearse it, to mitigate errors? What can somebody do to be better faster, to come up with new material quicker?
Absolutely. That's such a great question. I really think it's important to, like we were saying before, have places where you can be terrible. So step 1 is look around and find somewhere to bomb. Find somewhere to bomb. And that might be, you might be the only magician at an open mic night where everyone else is a pretty girl with a guitar. I did those gigs. Those are hard gigs. You might need to do a spot in a burlesque show. You might need to do a spot on a stand-up comedy club. Find a place that's well suited to you ish. Find a place that you're allowed to do 5 minutes, that takes care of you within reason. Respect the hell out of them, take good care of them, promote that show, be an asset. And then do that all the time. Like if it's a weekly and you're really genuinely working, do it every week. Do it all the time. Work on the material. That is the easiest way, the quickest way to get good at something is to do it. For me, the easiest thing to get good at is close-up magic because there is a little brewery by my house and I was working on this routine. I thought I created a new thing. I was pretty sure I found out later that somebody else invented it like 400 years ago because that's how magic
Never.
works.
You never created a new
You've
thing.
never
I
created
never
anything.
I never created a new thing either.
Yeah.
Every new thing I created I didn't actually create. So.
I'm really lucky. I now know that there are 3 things that I created that are definitely mine, but it took like
nice.
a year of asking
Yeah.
around before I was
Yeah.
confidently able to be like, okay, fine, that little thing,
Yeah.
that tiny little part of it is mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was down the street from my house at this little brewery, super cute brewery, very casual space. And I ordered my beer and I sat down and I was like, I'm just going to do it a bunch to make sure that I have the handling before I send videos of this to other magicians to find out if it's mine. So I just would sit at these tables and I would just do that one trick. And then somebody bought me a beer. So I was like, no, I'll stay another hour. And then the bar noticed I was doing it and they bought me a beer. So then, I mean, 3 beers for a person my size is a lot, so I stayed there for quite a while. But I probably got a chance to do that trick like 20 times that night, and by the end of the night, I had a whole new presentation for it, and I had my handling was much more confident. If you are focused on close-up magic, you can basically pull a show anywhere you want, period.
Anywhere is your open mic night starring one person, which is you, wherever. And it's just, yeah.
And if you're thinking, I'm just going to show my friends group, you're an idiot because they're like contractually bound to be nice to you. Don't show those people.
Just go to Starbucks.
Yeah. And I mean, what I would do is I would sit at a table with my beer and I would just shuffle cards and I would wait for somebody. Because this is like,
Hey, you a magician? Yeah, kind of. Have a seat.
Exactly.
You're good.
Or even just eye contact. Usually it's a woman. Usually they just make like this subtle side eye contact with me and go, hey, like you can just sort of like, okay, that person is trying to figure out what I'm doing. Then you walk over to the table and you go, hey, can I ask a weird question? They go, sure, because they've already established permission for you to come over, so they're going to be warm to you. I'm a magician. I don't know if you saw me. I'm just by myself. I'm trying to work on this thing. Can I just quickly show it to you and ask you what you think? No one's saying no to that unless because you've been welcomed with eye contact. You've done everything right. And with that opening, you can do it 1,000 times and really practice it and get it really, really good.
So there's one interesting added part, and this is something that comes from The Jerks. Do you read The Jerks?
No.
I will tell you all about this in a moment, but I'll just get this off my head. But not only does he say that, but the other added part that he says is, I'm working on a new trick for an upcoming magic competition. And what that allows is it allows people to be brutally honest because they're saving you from the competition, right? So you can say like, you can ask them to be honest about the things that you're really worried about, and then say like, I'm really looking out for this because of like, let me know if this fools you because I needed to fool the judges. And now they'll tell you if it fools them versus like, let me know if it fools you because my self-esteem is all wrapped up in it. Right? So that's an added bit, which I think is really interesting.
Smart.
But yeah.
Rather than asking if it fooled them, what I tend to go is, if you had to guess how that was done, what would you say? Because what ends up happening is now, even if they did fool them, they're guessing, and you learn a lot from the way that people think. Because a lot of the time they'll just go, oh, and they'll just guess the method by accident.
And if they go, I have no idea, then you go, what if, and there isn't, but what if there was $1,000 on the line?
Yeah, exactly.
And then they'll tell you, what they think.
And one of the things that I love about this the sort of Spanish practice of magic is that they really focus on trying to make things more and more impossible. And that's not really the way that I create magic, but I've been really interested in that lately. And so the practice of going, okay, if you had to guess what I was doing, what would you guess? Then when they tell you something, I then add that to
those doors.
Yeah, I add that to my repertoire for the next time. I go, okay, well, I got to prove that it's not that for next time.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay, so I sort of wanted to use that and transition a little bit into talking about women in magic. And this is always an obviously complicated issue, so complicated that you started a podcast about it. So mind me tripping over my words to try to get to some of the more specific questions. So the first is that I think that it is it's interesting, and also I'm really grateful in your story that you didn't grow up into magic first. And the reason I say that is because magic is maybe, and this I've learned from doing the interviews, really, is magic is not always the most welcoming environment depending on who you are. So it's not really a welcoming environment for young girls. Heck, sometimes it's not even a welcoming environment for young boys. You know,
Mhm.
I remember going and feeling uncomfortable at a magic lecture because the age gap was of 50 or 60 years. And that's nobody's fault. Nobody was being mean. Nobody was saying, no young boys allowed, or whatever the heck it is. But I had to find somebody who was my age who would go with me, you know, and that was Tyler at the time. And if he wasn't there, I'm sure I would have been like, nah, I'm going to go learn at home. And who knows how much longer it would have lasted. So, and I can only imagine how much worse that would be for a woman in magic. And it's interesting and exciting to see that you came into it from a different lens. So before we talk about some of the current problems and the things that you're doing to fix it, talk a little bit about your journey in magic and maybe the positives and the negatives that you found about being a woman in magic.
One of the great things about having Kayla Drescher as my co-host for the Shezam is that she grew up in magic. And so
Yeah, by the way, sorry, not to interrupt, but I feel like I've just said that you have a podcast, but I haven't just said it. So it's Shezam. It's a women. It's the Women in Magic podcast. I guess the simplest way to explain it, which is you and Kayla Drescher, who we already had on. And did I miss any little bits just explaining what it is briefly?
We started calling it a feminist podcast about magic.
Feminist podcast.
Because
okay.
we realized as most of our listenership is men. And
For
it's
sure.
a lot of men who are listening because they're trying to figure out how they can not say the wrong thing and to create a more welcoming space. And it's been such a great journey finding out how many men are so excited and so driven to make a better environment for everybody, and who recognize that welcoming women into this industry will it only serve to diversify and make it more interesting and make it more culturally relevant. And so we've kind of stopped calling it a Women in Magic podcast. We've started really calling it a feminist magic podcast because there's
feminist magic podcast. I like that better, by the way, because it means you've got a whole bunch of men listening to a feminist podcast, which is something that I bet nobody thought that anybody would get done, and that's a big accomplishment for anybody, let alone the magic community. But so let's go back and let's talk about your experience as a woman in magic, good and bad, or good or bad.
Yeah, it's so different from what Kayla went through because she really grew up through it and she experienced.
She was in the meat of it.
Yeah, she was in the meat of it, but I sort of came into it like a babe. And so after I had created my first hour, I performed it for about a year, and then the next summer, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to a convention. I'm going to go to a magic convention.
Sorry, just to interject, you're talking about your first hour, you're talking about doing sideshow, and were there any of this sort of gigantic discrepancy in male versus female in things like sideshow, or was it absolutely, did you feel out of place in any way?
The thing with sideshow is the community is very different because it's about being willing to hurt yourself, and because the skills are so hard to acquire.
Yeah.
There is a lot. I feel to me that it was a lot less sexist, even though it was still kind of a boys' club. There was enough women doing it. There was enough, and we were all very well respected because if you were doing this stuff,
just enough respect for the raw talent.
Exactly. And my mentors at the time were Ryan Stock and Amber Lynn, and they're two of the most generous, wonderful people in all of Sideshow and Magic. And so they did a very good job of making sure that I was well taken care of. So I didn't experience any of that, which is part of why I think on the Shezam podcast, Kayla and I are a bit like sugar and salt.
Yeah.
Because she's lived through it and I did not. And circus itself is very gender equal, and because a lot of acrobatics is focused on communication and trust, and so there's been a lot of really important work done in the circus community to make it really safe for women and safe for men too, because when real gender equality, when we start approaching that, it feels better for everybody benefits. Of
course.
It's not a women's issue, it's an everybody issue. And so I had this like background of going to circus conventions, and I used to run a circus convention for 5 years, and I'm like, okay, well, I know what that is. And that was so valuable for me. I have my first hour in magic. I've been doing it for a year. Now I go to a convention. Now I figure out how would I do lines up with the community and I'm going to go be part of the community. That's what I'm going to do this year. That's my summer. So I booked Abercorndabra, I just to go, just to attend, and Kidabra because I was doing just as many adult shows as I was doing kids magic shows, and I wanted to get a good sense of it. Now here's what you need to know. A circus convention is a very specific beast. Everybody dresses up on day one within reason. You show up looking like a circus performer. You show up ready to perform because there's probably going to be a renegade and everyone's going to perform in the renegade. And everybody is on their feet all day, sharing skills, learning to juggle, doing acrobatics. There's usually a big open room between where you've just decided I don't want to go to any of the lectures right now. And instead I'm just going to juggle in this big group of jugglers. That's what a circus convention is. And so I assumed a magic convention was very similar. So I showed up at Abercorndabra, which is in Iowa, in a corset and 4-inch heels, looking like the performer self, my performer self, thinking I was going to walk through those doors and everyone was going to look like that. And I opened the doors and I walked into the dealer's room for the first time at my very first magic convention. And you know those old westerns where like the hero walks into the saloon and everybody stops playing the piano and they look up? That exact thing happened. And I was there by myself and I just remember thinking like,
oh, and you were wearing your outfit.
Yeah, I was in
because that's day one. That's awesome.
Freaking like I was in a corset and
that's
like
awesome.
Like heels and this like mini skirt and I'm like that's what I wore as a magician.
That's awesome.
And everyone.
It's like everyone agreed to dress up and then everyone else called each other and forgot to call you back.
I felt like such a weirdo, but all I could think is like, okay, well, fucked up. I mean, I don't know if you're allowed to say that word here, but
you're welcome to.
Okay, I messed up. I fucked up. And oh well, I'm just gonna go make friends. And I knew nobody. And David Parr was there, and Joe Diamond was there, and Kayla Drescher was there, and Stan Allen was there, and all of these people are now my closest friends.
Just to put that into context for people, what year was that? How long ago was this first magic convention?
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna quickly. I don't want to risk being wrong, so I'm gonna go to Facebook and I'm gonna quickly look it up on Facebook.
It doesn't need to be specific. Was it 2 years ago? Was it 5 years ago?
It was 4 years ago. It was 4 summers ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was 4 summers ago. And I mean, I didn't know any of these people. And yeah, and I walked over to the table where Joe Diamond was selling haunted keys, and I bought a haunted key, and we struck up a conversation. He did blockhead, and I did blockhead. And how do you do blockhead? And he's good friends with David.
Had you ever? I guess you'd been into a magic store, right?
I'd been into a magic shop. There's the Vanishing Rabbit in Calgary.
Right.
But the Vanishing Rabbit is very, there's nobody hangs out there, right? It's just, it's Brent Smith doing his very best to keep a brick and mortar shop going. And that's the only way I've ever known it. I've never walked in there and had a people session. It's a great space, but it's not, nobody hangs. And the Calgary Magic Club has never been robust. It's always been, 5 or 6 guys hanging out, and then some people show up. Like we've always been, our culture in Calgary is a little more muted, and here I was in this huge group of magicians, and I was like, what is going on? This is so different. But everybody was really nice to me, and I immediately became fast friends with David Parr and Joe Diamond and Stan Allen and Kayla Drescher, and it was those are relationships that have persisted to be some of my favorite friendships in magic. And and it was just like such a wake-up call. So then I go immediately from there basically to Kidabra, where pretty much the exact same thing happens, except for now I get to meet David Kay, and I get to meet all these kid show people who are killer, Buster Balloon, all these amazing performers, Susan Herring. And then I was like, and then I met Scott, Ken Scott, and he was doing another convention only a week later that was Atlantic Harvest. And I thought, you know what? The last convention I went to was like my grown-up magic convention, and I didn't know what I was doing. I should go to this. I should just go, because now I know what I'm getting into. And that's where I met Zabrecki and Harry Anderson
Right.
and John Armstrong and other people that I really admire. So that became this convention of me meeting people that I didn't necessarily become close with, but people who would serve to sort of define what it was I wanted to do. And I came home after that and looked at my material and went, I'm a fool. I am a fool and an idiot because I had been writing magic with the goal of making it extremely fooling. I wanted to knock people's socks off, but it meant nothing. The kind of material
Right.
I was writing
Can I
was
guess? Was it David Parr that did that for you?
it was David Parr, it was Zabrecki,
Right, right.
it was
Yeah.
Harry
Listen, all the
Anderson.
names, all the names that you just said.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about. We recently did an episode with David Parr, and that was he did quite a good job of drilling that point in, and enough that I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
it rang through in my conscience for quite a while.
And it was heartbreaking because I looked at my sideshow material and I went, I used to do that. I
Hmm.
used to create material. My blockhead routine, it's not uncommon for people, if I really sell it, to cry a little. Because
Hmm.
I do it with a lobotomy spike
Right.
that
Oh
was
yeah.
used to lobotomize children by Freeman and Watts. And
My lord.
I talk about what a lobotomy really means, and I talk about, what it would be like to be separated from your identity because that's what they were doing. A lobotomy separates the rest of your brain from its frontal cortex, and you live in your frontal cortex. That's who you are. And that kind of meaning and that passion existed in my sideshow, but I was so distracted by how seductive it is to create really fooling magic that I had forgotten to put art in it. And so I came home and I basically started over again and took all that material, and I mean half of it I just had to be thrown away because there was no way of fixing it. And then the rest of it I really worked on, and I slaved away, and I built a show that I was proud of. And then
So yeah. So I mean, so let's just talk about that last
mhm.
bit, or at least that last bit really, I mean, really resonated with me. Um, can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, of
I
course.
mean, that idea of discovering that your magic is void of, or not void of, but you realize you're focusing on the wrong thing. You discovering that I found your card in a stack of 10 versus a stack of 20 doesn't make it twice as fooling. Something that'll make, or twice as good. The thing that'll make that twice as good is having people care about why I'm finding a card in the first place, or having there any artistic aspect, or
Mhm.
anything, right? The art, and that's something uh that is often missed and overlooked, and particularly magicians, when we get so deep into this, like when we get like 30 years and 20 years into this, you forget what it is to be a layman, and you forget that the whole point is the art and the story, and and you end up doing these weird magic, weird magic, because it's just you trying to fool yourself, and the trick that you do is a trick that fooled you most recently,
Yeah.
and what has nothing to do with an audience, or how they care about magic, or art, or just at anything. So magicians get stuck, and they end up picking the wrong material, and because they don't stop and think about and focus on that. So what can somebody do if they're looking at their act and they're like, no, I just realized all my magic is I'm doing it wrong.
It's so
I'm
bad.
focusing on making it impossible, and I want to make it more emotional or impactful. What can somebody do?
So I have an advantage here because I went to ACAD. I've done contemporary art school, visual arts, and I also have a theater
Right.
background. So when I saw this problem, I already had the tools to fix it. Uh, in my lecture, I do this section called Crash Course $32,000 worth of art school knowledge in 15 minutes. And in that, I talk about creating meaningful work. And the important thing to remember is that we are the most visually literate culture in human history. Now, what do I mean by that? When you watch television, when you watch a play, when you speak to somebody, when you interpret language, when you read a text and you derive from that piece of information true meaning, you are exercising a part of your brain that we call visual literacy. Your job is to figure out from an image what is meant. When you look in someone's eyes, are they telling the truth or are they lying? When you see an actor, what you pick up the subtle meaning. Actors have had to learn to be better actors because we are better at deciphering. You
Our
look at
bullshit meters are off the charts now.
exactly, and it's because we are
Yeah.
a highly visually literate culture. So what becomes really important if you don't have a lot of acting training, which most magicians don't, is authenticity. Because if you're trying to play pretend at something, you're going to fail unless you have the training, because our bullshit meters are extremely accurate. Everybody's, as children's, we spend all day consuming content that makes us better at understanding other content. And so when you sit down and you decide to create work as a magician, if you don't have a involved theater background, step one is to ask yourself, what is it I most want to share? What is the thing? And it doesn't necessarily have to be about magic, but I think that's a great place to start. So the question lately I've been asking myself, I just went to Mexico and I went to visit a friend, but I also specifically went for Day of the Dead because I wanted to see what real magic looks like. I wanted to see the way that people behave. I wanted to see reverence. And I felt bad because, I'm like a tourist coming and being like, I want to see your culture. But it's important for me to look and see the way that people behave and the way people are acting and the way that they see magic, and to watch the way people there reacted to my magic, because it taught me a lot about another way of looking at art, the art of magic, and another way that people experience magic. But that's only what I want to communicate now. That's suddenly become interesting to me. When I first started doing magic, what I wanted to communicate in it was the idea of fantasy, the idea of wish fulfillment. For the longest time, I thought of magic as an opportunity to explore what it would be like to have all your wishes. When you buy a lottery ticket, you're not buying the chance to win $10 million. Nobody's that delusional. You're buying permission to wish, to really deeply wish you could be different, and to fantasize about what that would be like if you could do anything. And I think that that wish is worth $2 once in a while. That's a completely beautiful thing to do. But that's, I kind of think, why people buy a ticket to a magic show. They buy a ticket to a magic show for the same reason they buy a lottery ticket. They want to experience a fantasy. They want to see what it might feel like to be powerful in a different way, to be able to really read someone's mind or really move things with your mind, or even just do anything, or just the way it would be to exist as a person that had real and true power. People don't go to a magic show to be like, to figure out how a trick is done, or to be fooled. They're looking for some other experience, some secular form of magic.
So there's two things there. So the first is that, I agree. I agree that there's much more of a richness that we need to be trying to express. But I will have one counterpoint, which is that it's not that I think that everyone is coming to the show for that reason. I think that there's a wide variety.
Mhm.
Many of the people are coming to the show because they just want to see if they can be fooled by the magician. Some people like magic for that reason. Other people like magic for the fantasy reason. That's why some people really like David Blaine and really think Chris Angel's hokey. And then other people really love Chris Angel and, will talk my ear off about how that stuff is real, and then someone else really likes Justin Willman and then someone else really doesn't like it. You know what I mean? So the fact that there's a wide array means that we can't be so single-minded as to think that people just want to come to be baffled beyond their,
Well,
beyond their belief. The same way that they also don't want to watch us do a one-man play with no magic,
that's
right?
true. But let me challenge that. Some people don't like Justin Willman. Some people don't like Blaine. But nobody doesn't love Zabrecki. And nobody doesn't love Harry Anderson. I don't know anybody that doesn't love those two guys. Everybody loves that. And what is common, what is the similar thing in the acts that I look at that nobody hates, everybody finds something valuable in them, is that they are expressions of real magic. When you watch it, you feel like they feel like magic is real. And so even if you're there to be tricked, even if you're there because you want to figure out the puzzle, you are still susceptible to the seduction of what the art of magic can provide. There is a sense of wonder and there is a permissiveness that magic gives you to be childlike and to be whimsical and to be playful in a way that our culture has shut down in adults. This whole
Right.
thing right now of like, oh, I can't adult right now. Just the fact that that's a sentence communicates to me that it's not that you can't adult right now, it's that you wish you could do whatever you wanted. You wish you could eat all the
Right.
candy. And in a magic show, you can eat all the
You
candy.
can eat all the
You can eat
candy.
all the candy. So I agree. Some people show up in that room for different reasons. Some people are there to be like, I'm going to mess with the magician. Those are terrible people, but they do come to magic shows. But it doesn't matter why you came if what I give you is universally appealing.
One of the things that I always feel that resonates with what you just said, which is, first of all, I like the idea about seeking the people that everyone loves. And I don't know, by the way, if that's the best or worst example, because I don't know if appeasing everybody is a good or bad thing.
That's
That
true.
being said, I love Rob Zabrecki the most within inches of my life. So I mean, it's probably a good thing the way he does it. But the idea that, you're looking for that best person and saying they are able to give this gift. Another way to look at it is, even when I watch a magician like Rob Zabrecki, I know magic. Right? But for some reason, when I was watching him, I noticed myself getting all caught up in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that goes on to what you were saying about, like, you're susceptible, like you don't stand a chance, right? And the same way that you don't stand a chance when you sit in the theater and Harry Potter starts playing, like you're probably going to watch all 7 movies. Obviously that's a bad example, but that's the point, right? Is that you're going to make it to the end and you're going to come out like, does anyone really hate the movie Inception? Like you're going to come out of it having an experience and having taken something from it, which is very different than you feel having left a university lecture, where you don't feel emotionally changed having left it. You don't feel like you've experienced something or something to that nature. So I really like that. And I think just as a minor thing to take or a minor thing to remember already is just to start appealing to the emotional side and appealing to the artistic side. And I really like that. I don't remember when we got off track, but although I've loved wherever we've gone to, but let's just hop back on a little bit to talk a little bit more about women in magic.
Sure.
So
before we do, I do want to say you said something really great that I want to reinforce, is the idea that, like, you're totally right. I'm not saying that you should try to be universally liked. I think it's very important that you said that, and I want to repeat that. Like, it is okay to make art that people aren't going to like. It's an important phase. I just think that there is something to be learned from looking at what is resonating with audiences and not just go, I'm going to do that, because that's the cheapest way to do it. To look at it and go, what is it about this experience that is making the people in this room behave like children, behave in a good way, to experience this powerful sense of whimsy? I don't want to do what those artists are doing, but I do want to spend time understanding why it's so powerful so that I can do that in my own way. And maybe the way I do that will make it so that my work is not universally liked. And I will say, I do create work that is not universally liked. So I am somebody that not everyone's going to like, and I don't care.
Yeah. My example of that person, by the way, that I usually use is David Williamson. And the example is talking about audiences, right? Whereas for me, a feeble young performer, I have to think to myself, who am I performing for? Versus David Williamson, I feel like I can wake him up in the middle of the night, and no matter who's in the audience, no matter which mix of old people, young people, dogs, like it would be the best show that they've all ever seen. So he, that's my example of somebody who it's like, I strive to be able to work for any audience, but feeble little old me still has to think about the audience
Can
that
I
he's
tell you
performing
one
for.
quick David Williamson story?
Sure.
So this last year is my 4th year stage managing for Magic Live. Next year will be my 5th year.
Oh,
And a couple
wow.
years ago we had David Williamson. And he's backstage and he's telling this amazing story to everyone. And there's this green room backstage for the general sessions at Magic Live, and everyone's just sitting around the table and everyone's leaned all the way in, like almost crawling on the table to get close to him to listen to this compelling story. And I'm sitting there in the door frame and I'm looking at the time and I'm like, okay, he's got his mic on, but I got to throw him out on that stage in like 30. And so I let him go till the last possible second. And then I go, David, you're on. And he goes, great. He gets up. He walks onto the stage. He completely switches gear. He delivers this. Were you there when he did Magic Live?
No. I wasn't at Magic Live.
He cried in his little talk. He was so compelling and passionate and wonderful and so likable. And then he walks off the stage. He walks back into the green room. Everyone's like been watching his show on the monitor. He sits down and he picks up in the middle of the sentence before he walked out of the room, and everyone's back in. He was the center of attention for most of that day. He is.
But could you imagine? Like, could you imagine going into 2 different rooms and immediately being the center of attention in all of them? Like at that, it's just unbelievable.
It was like it was real magic. It was.
I can barely hold that attention in a 10-minute set,
Right?
let alone life. Okay, so let's go back to changing gears, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about women in magic,
Yes.
particularly so we could talk about the podcast. But more than that, we started talking about magic conventions, which was just a big shocker. More that no one was wearing costumes or whatever, but also that it was a bunch of dudes,
All dudes,
and all dudes, really. That's right. And then talk about that. I mean, aside from the magic convention, what grinds your gears so much about it that you started a podcast about it? Or what do you know that other people don't know that is why you started talking about it so much? Or like, what was it? A bad experience? Was it a good experience? Like what? Like, talk about your situation as being a woman in magic.
Well, the podcast, it was Kayla's idea originally,
right?
And we bounced around. We recorded episodes that we didn't release. It took us 5 months to launch the first episode, and we just kept thinking, there's so many questions, and people don't know what. Everyone's super confused, and all the people. It felt like it's not true. We realize now because we've done more research. It felt like at the time that everybody who was trying to figure out this problem was a dude, because we just happened to have a lot of dudes at the top. And so Kayla and I really thought about it, and we realized, and the first thing we say in our first episode is, if not us, who? And if not now, when?
Right.
There's nothing particularly special about Kayla or I, except for that we're willing to do it. We're here right now. We're relatively well informed, although we have so much to learn, and we're the only ones willing to do it right now. And it had to happen. In fact, it should have happened a year ago. The longer this podcast goes on, the more I think I wish we would have done it earlier.
When you first started thinking about doing it.
Exactly. But we were just so worried that we didn't have the knowledge. But what we've realized with this is that it's not. When Kayla first proposed this idea to me, she was like, we should do a 5-part series. And I went, yeah. And then we sat down and we wrote down some ideas, and we came up with 27 different concepts. And we realized, wow, when you really think about it, this is a really big issue. It's archetypes, it's pockets, it's props, it's character, it's environment, it's communication styles, it's having no role models, it's what is it like what is the life cycle of magic, it's the way that magic is
everything.
It's everything. I mean, in particular, what I'm really fascinated by right now is this idea that magic loves its elders, loves them, and society doesn't want older women in show business. So what's gonna happen?
Oh, that's an interesting combination of.
The women just gonna go away, or do they have to pretend to be young forever, or do they
or do they become do older women become advisors very quickly, much
Yeah.
quicker than older men,
Exactly.
right?
Like, what would
That's
it
really
take to get
interesting.
a female Divernon in the next 20
Right.
years? What would that
Right.
take? What would it take to get a female professor? Like what's it going to take? And so it became this like really rich, interesting conversation, and out of nowhere, we just got all this attention, and all of a sudden, this goofy little thing that Kayla and I were doing that we didn't think anyone was going to ever listen to. We have nearly 10,000 downloads in the first 10 episodes,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I mean I think I can announce this, but we just got funding from the IBM.
That's incredible.
So what happened? This is For the longest time, this was just Kayla and I talking into the empty void of nothing. And now I've been to 4 conventions since we launched this podcast.
And people know who you are.
Everybody talks to us about it. People have questions and they have suggestions. And my favorite thing is that people keep like walking up to me, and there's this look of recognition in their eyes, and they stand about 2 feet away and they put their hands at their side like little wings, and they go, "Are you the one that hugs?" And it's the best, because in that moment, I'm like, I love this. I know you're a listener, and I know you want to come hug me, but you listened actively. Like you're like, oh, if it's Kayla, I shouldn't hug them,
Yeah.
but also I should give them. I'm learning. I've learned a thing. I'm going to stand my ground. They're going to come to me. I was just like, and it just keeps
That's
happening. And
awesome.
every time it
Yeah.
happens, I'm just like, oh, I'm so happy right now. It's just great.
That's awesome.
It's been
Okay,
so
so there's a few different things I want to talk about. Obviously, like the experience of having a podcast and being able to have a platform, and particularly compared to this, where you guys are talking about one very important issue, and each moment of recognition is also a moment of recognition that there are magicians that care about this issue, and that is much more exciting than just being noticed that someone's your fan, but rather that another old white male cares about women in magic, which is bonkers, right? So that's the real amazing, that's the real victory when someone's saying, "Can I hug you?" Is not that you have a new listener, but that you have a new advocate.
Yeah.
But let's talk about a few different things. So it's interesting and exciting to me that you don't have this like colossal negative story, or this like, and it seems like that seems to be the case, right? And it seems to be more that this problem of women in magic is not, it's not, maybe this isn't the right way to say it, but it's not a crisis that needs to be solved, but it's really a puzzle that desperately needs to be solved. Like this isn't like it's not like someone's going, the problem is that men just, do not welcome women. I think for the most part, like you said, you went to your first magic convention, it was all dudes, but they were pretty welcoming guys. You were just the only woman there, right?
Yeah.
And so part of this is just us getting to the bottom of this and saying, why is it happening? What can we do? How can we fix it? So let's just, obviously, the reason you guys started a podcast is because it's such a big answer to that question. But Cliff Notes, like if there's a guy listening to this and says like, I care about women in magic, what can I start to do? And I have some more specific questions in a minute, but Cliff Notes, like what can somebody do to make it a more welcoming environment, to help there be more women in magic, so that like what can somebody do so that they don't just feel like, just by being a guy in magic that their hands are tied as to this big discrepancy.
Well, I think the first step that Kayla and I talk about is advocacy for sure. So right now, a lot of my success, I'm not an idiot, can be chalked up to the fact that magic desperately wants there to be successful women. That's what's happening. And so as soon as I got a platform where I could demonstrate an amount of ability, all of a sudden it was like, poof, I'm booked everywhere. Because there's this desperate need for there to be competent women in magic. We don't just want to showcase women, we want to showcase competent women. We want to show that the girls can play just as hard as the boys, which is great. And there's there's a lot of little traps that we fall into. We talk about this with Max Maven on the episode we did with him about the trouble with tokenism. And I'm personally, Kayla and I talk about this. We're okay with tokenism as long as you recognize what that is. So, for example, I am pretty much always the only woman in the room because you book a convention, a small convention, you go, we need a girl,
Right.
Kayla or Carissa or Jade or Suzanne, or you pick one.
Right.
You pick a
Right.
girl that best suits the goals of your convention. But you pick one. It's just one. So what ends up happening in terms of tokenism is that you create a culture where the women that rise to the top are women that can either play well with the boys or are good at being alone. And the trouble with that is that you end up only getting the same kind of women. So right now, I don't know if you saw the memes for magicians thing that
I
that
did.
happened.
As a matter of fact, like, I mean, I didn't listen to the episode, but I basically went through. I was a part of every post, as much as going as far back as I saw the original meme and I commented, "What is this garbage?" or some other comment, something like that. I don't remember what it was before the whole thing blew up.
It blew up so
So
hard.
I felt like I was right at the edge of the theater, right at the edge of the seats. But I didn't listen to the specific episode, so if there was details in that, I don't
It's
know.
not important. What's important is that a lot of what was happening was that, or that I recognized that I thought was very interesting, was that there were a couple of women in Magic and a couple of men who posted things along the lines of like, "Well, I'm not offended," or "My wife isn't offended. Get over yourself." And what that made me aware of was the fact that, okay, I'm also not offended, but that's why I'm here. I made it to where I am because I can handle that stuff. But being able to handle being alone, or which is
Should
what you
not
are,
be a requisite
it
to
should
be a
not be a
magician.
prerequisite, right? Like, you shouldn't have to deal with misogynistic jokes. You shouldn't be able to grin and bear it. You shouldn't be able to hang out, basically be willing to be by yourself, or to only ever hang out. These should not be prerequisites to be able to make the kind of art that you're passionate about. This is an art form. Anybody should be able to paint. You shouldn't have to be able to talk about football to be able to paint. And I mean, we're magicians, so we don't know anything about football, but like, we have the whatever magician version of that. And so one of the things to recognize is when you're trying to be supportive of women in magic, to recognize some of the problems that come with tokenism. It's good. It's an important first step. It is an important first step. If you're planning a convention, make sure you have a female lecturer or at least one woman on the bill of some kind. Absolutely. But then go, could I maybe put two in, or am I limiting who I can bring in if there's only one? Would there be value in having more than one? And if I am booking two, do they have similar perspectives? Do they have different perspectives? What would best suit my convention? And just recognizing, like, when you do hire one lady, there's going to be, just know what it's like to be all by yourself. Now, that doesn't really affect me because I've basically only worked in male dominated industry, so I'm fine and Kayla's fine. There's lots of women who are fine. But just make sure that, like, you're checking in and making sure that, you haven't
So
isolated
what
that
do we
person.
do? So what do we do about the problem that it's only the women that are fine with that either play well alone or play well with the boys that end up making it through? Like, how many women would have killed to have a women's magic club but don't get it, and then that's why they're not here, right? Like, I mean, that's obviously, I
Mhm.
just fed one hypothetical answer, but what do we do about that problem? Because I I don't how do you solve it? Because each new year the Magic Club is still mostly boys, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, each new year, it's going to be a long time until the girl is going to not have to deal with boys in Magic. You know what I mean? Like, just based on the boys, there's a lot of boys in Magic. So, like, how do we handle this? Because the problem makes sense. You very clearly articulated it. But what can we do about this? Because it seems like every girl in Magic is going to have to learn to play with the boys or learn to play well alone.
Yeah, potentially. Or we can be more specific about our recruitment. So one of the really wonderful gifts that I received this year was when I was doing the lecture tour with John Reed. And shout out to John Reed. Oh my God, you're my favorite person.
And we will talk about that shortly, by the way.
We got to do a lot of these extra lectures for the junior club. So we'd get brought in to do a lecture for the adult club, and then I would usually do something for juniors or John or both of us. Junior clubs tended to be almost 50-50 boys and girls.
Oh,
So
wow.
pretty consistently. So
now the question is, where are they being lost?
yes, exactly.
Right.
We need to start thinking in terms of the life cycle of a magician. What is the life cycle of an entertainer in magic? You get interested, someone buys you a magic kit. Well, magic kits are more and more something that you might consider getting to a little girl, and then you bring them to the club. Okay, well, do we not have enough women, like young girls, coming to the club? Then we create posters to put around schools that have girls in the picture doing magic. And then when we have lecturers, one of the interesting things when I was lecturing for young women in magic was that I would instinctively teach magic where you didn't need pockets and where you didn't need a suit jacket, where you didn't need things that were inherently masculine. And then somebody else would come and do a quick lecture, and they would be
And all
like,
the women were like, I can't.
exactly, I can't. If there's a
Right.
girl in your audience, make sure you're prepared to have an alternate solution. And keep in mind, that's going to be a struggle. I have a parasol routine. It's not my most proud work, but I don't mind it. It's fine. But when I was creating this parasol routine, I had to reinvent parasols. I genuinely had to rebuild them because all of the work, 100% of the work on Parasol Productions, the published work, 100%, I bought every single thing, is about producing it from a knee-high
Your
man's book,
jacket.
boot, or a jacket.
Right.
And not just a jacket, a woman's jacket is a very different structure than a man's blazer.
Right. 'Cause it comes in.
Yeah. So you want to do parasols? You need to basically be willing to reinvent the wheel. And I did. I do my parasol production from a corset and a mini skirt. And that was a 2-year process.
So, I mean, I think the answer is that there isn't this is the thing, right? The thing is everything. The thing is front of mind, right? The thing is thing is everything.
I would say the issue is default. The issue has become the default of magic is to identify the performer as the masculine, to identify that within this industry, men are the magician and women are the assistants, to feel like it makes sense to speak in the masculine and to think from the male perspective, because magic isn't just a male-dominated industry. Magic is a female-subjugated industry. It is an industry where it's not that women aren't present. It's that the only space for women has been in the assistant role. And there's nothing wrong with being an assistant. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with being a partner in magic. Illusions are amazing. They're great. But it's like in the 50s when the only thing you could be was a mom. There is nothing wrong with being a mom. Being a mom is great. But being a mom is better when you chose to be a mom. Being an assistant is very powerful when that is the role that you want, when it's not the only thing you were given.
Right. It's nice that the girls hold up the numbers in boxing matches, but it's also nice that there's female boxing.
Exactly. Then you can choose. Then it's not, you don't feel like these people are in these positions because they were relegated to them. I love that when I talk to Misty Knight, I know that she's doing the job in the way that she wants to do it, and she loves what she does. And she can be whatever she wants, and she is exactly what she wants to be. When I talk to Misty Knight, she's a great performer, a powerful, interesting performer. And you know, she is a magician. She moves between roles in her show, and she is welcome to be whatever she wants because we exist in a culture where you can choose. So I think it comes down to, it's not about fixing the whole culture overnight. There's no quick fixes, unfortunately. There's no magnets, no strings, perform it tomorrow, reputation maker version of getting women into magic. It's all the things. And part of what it is starting from empathy, recognizing that you need to start questioning all your default assumptions, expressing empathy, empathizing about what it would be like if you started from a different set. you started from a different position, a different perspective, and you had to do magic from that other perspective, what would that be like? What suggestions might you make from that position? And also recognizing that everybody's different. The amount of times people have come up to me and said, "You know what you should do? You should do a thing with flowers."
Of
And I
course. Yeah.
and I'm grateful for that because I know that person is trying to help. And I'm so grateful that they're comfortable enough with me to make a suggestion. I'm always grateful. But part of what I want to do is go, "Have you seen my act? Ha-
Right.
do you know?"
Like, do you know what you're even talking
Right?
about?
Like, I would never go up to a magician I'd never seen their work of.
You need
And
footballs.
you need football exactly. And that and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
ask yourself, are you walking up to men and asking them to do football magic? Because
yeah.
if you're just walking up to me and saying, you should do something with like
Pink.
eyeliner and pink,
Yeah.
you would never do that. I am not defined by my gender. It does make it so that there are some things because magic is an art form that's based on assumptions. That's based on this is how you think a coin behaves. And this is what you think a wallet does. It becomes important to analyze assumptions. And so part of those assumptions are going to be based on the fact that I'm a woman, but some of those assumptions are going to be based on the fact that I'm a weirdo or that I look a certain way or that I'm kooky or that I have a voice that doesn't really match my face. Things like that. Like just being a little bit more empathetic and also recognizing that women are individuals. And so if you want to help, you're going to be focused on helping individual women more than you're going to be able to make decisions and change your behavior overall.
That is the money. That's what I'm looking for. It's all great. It's all great, but that is what I'm looking for. That is something that I think anybody and everybody can do, and anybody who is listening to this can keep in ready position, knees bent and arms. I guess none of us play sports, so no one knows what that is. But just ready for it to happen, and for you to be hanging out the magic shop, and the girl comes in with her father, and she's like, "Hey, I love this trick," in the same way that you would tell the guy, like, "Hey, come here," and you show him a trick, right? Like, you have to do it also, right? And when you're designing the poster for the magicians, and you're drawing a magician, like, draw the female, right? Because someone's looking at that, and when you're, it's like, it's at each point, be weary, and at each opportunity for it to come up, do your best to tackle it. And I'll just ask a very specific question, and then we'll move on to some other things, which is one of the issues that we try to tackle at the Toronto Magic Company is we're trying to get more women, and we're trying to get as well more people of color. And it's one of those things where we're solving the problem from the far end. The old joke is the guy goes to the doctor and he says, "Doctor, my eye hurts every time I drink coffee," and the doctor says, "Take the spoon out," right? And we're in a situation where our eye hurts. We want more women, we want more people of color, but it's a problem of when they got into magic, not when they choose to perform. Right? 3 years later, we're only getting the results. Right? We're only dealing with the results. But so even still, we're trying to do as much as we can. But what can we do from your perspective? What can any performing organization, performing group, performers do to be more welcoming and more encouraging to women, but also any other minority? Because that's the real money of what we're trying to get at here, is like, how do we make magic a more welcoming industry, so it's not just self-feeding of the same people, like, because it's a weird club now, right? So how do we fix that, or what can we do?
I It's funny, I get asked this a lot, and I'm always
And oh, by the way, yeah, you might not be the doctor of, you might not. I only asked because you have the podcast, and I think that you may have encountered, more, have
yeah.
encountered this more
It's
times.
it's tough because I recognize that, women are a minority, and so the obvious next question becomes how do we make all minorities feel safe? But I don't feel comfortable. I mean, I barely feel comfortable speaking on behalf of women. I certainly don't feel
Right.
comfortable speaking on behalf of all minorities. But what I will say is that it's that thing of not being the only one. So recognizing that if if there's a girl who's interested in coming to your club, you go, yeah, definitely come. And then you try and make sure that she feels safe, and don't try and touch her. Don't touch her. And and encourage her and be supportive, but immediately keep your
Try
eyes
to
open.
find her another friend that's a girl.
Exactly. And then continue.
Yeah.
Because there's this point, you'll feel it in your club. You'll feel it. There's this point where you go, we have enough that it's going to self-perpetuate now, because women are going to show up and go, oh, I see myself in this room. Okay. I
Yeah.
immediately feel a sense of belonging. And I cannot speak to it because I'm not as part of any other minority group except for queer culture. But and that's not a visible minority as much. But I imagine it's probably the same, where if you want people of color, then the goal is not to go, we got one, and then stop. The goal is to
Endlessly.
it becomes this endless level of advocacy. And then the next step that Kayla and I talk about a bit is advocacy. Is that when I see a woman, when I see a person of color, when I see anyone that represents a level of diversity that I want to see in Magic, who I think their show is genuinely amazing, I become basically that person's like
Cheerleader number one.
cheerleader number one. I'm
Of
wearing
course.
t-shirts with their face on it. No, that's too
Yeah.
much. But anytime I get booked for something and I get the opportunity to recommend, I recommend authentically the people that I think would be a good fit. But I do specifically focus on, here's a couple of women and here are a couple of people of color that I think would be a fantastic fit for this, or other forms of diversity that group might want. And really focusing on this idea of like, just but it's important to make sure that those people are ready for those opportunities. Giving
Right.
people opportunities they're not ready for just because you think it would be good for them to have, it'd be good for Magic Bar to have a girl. Yes.
Only if she's ready.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if she's terrible, that helps nobody. That doesn't help her.
Right,
That doesn't help
right.
the movement. That doesn't help
But
the
if she's
spectators.
terrible, then you have an opportunity to put her in contact with someone who's not terrible and help her get better faster, right?
Yeah.
The same way that you would help anybody. I want to move on for a few reasons. Number one, because I have a whole bunch more things to talk to you about. But number two, because just the overarching idea that it doesn't, we learned this in the process of the podcast that, there have been a lot of disagreements on this topic, but one of the things that it's come down to is obviously it's not a problem based on everybody saying, like, oh, the problem of women in Magic, but, it's not the elephant in the room, and let's stop treating it as such, right? So it's a topic that I wanted to hear your opinion on, but it's obviously not the elephant in the room, so much so that it played no role in any of your stories so much as me bringing it up, right? So I just wanted to highlight that because it even surprises me time and time again that I'm constantly asking women to come on the show about how it's affected them, and oftentimes they're like, not that much negatively, right? Like, or at least so maybe not that much negatively, but it doesn't really play a role in their story so much as I would think that it might. As to be a big, huge mountain to overcome. So let's move on and talk about other things. One thing that I was super interested in, which we spoke a little bit about before you got on, is you were talking about lecturing. And there was something in the lectures that you talk about, which it was a word that is all the Scrabble points. And I just wanted to bring it up. So the word and the idea is meta modernity.
Yes.
And you gave me a little bit of an explanation of what it was before, so much so that it blew my mind right out of my ears. So let's bring it all back for people. So recently you've been doing more lecturing. Tell us very quickly about that, but more specifically about, that one part in your lecture that people have been really hooking on to, which is the idea of meta modernity.
Well, one of the great things about the lecture tour that I did with John was that I was able to put things in and take things out. And usually after like a club lecture, everybody goes to the diner and chats more. And so I would get to see what people would focus on. And when you see people focus, you learn two things. You find out what people are interested in, and also what you taught badly, because they're going to ask you to clarify it. And so it got cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And then there was a point this summer where I put this thing in the lecture that I've been thinking about for a long time. And that became the thing in the last 3 months that everyone is emailing me about, everybody wants to talk about it. Yeah, it's metamodernity. So my concept was, usually as a because of my visual artist background, my practice is a little weird, and so the concept I started from was I was asking myself, why is the general zeitgeist, the way that normal people feel about magic, is that magic is a little lame. A lot of people, like, if you think about it, magic is a punchline often.
For
There's a
sure.
classic joke about, like, yeah, I punched a magician, or things like the way we see it in
Yeah, like,
Arrested
his
Development.
uncle's a
Yeah,
magician.
exactly. Like this
Yeah.
cheesy uncle magician. Where does that come from, and what is that motivated by, and what is that? Is that a necessary cultural thing that's going on right now because we need somebody to feel like we're better than, or is it because magic is about power? And so I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized, like, we're just one step up from mime. Like, people really make fun of magicians a lot, because in researching this I found so much cultural reference to, like, magic is lame, and and what I realized was that I was able to use my art history education to explain it.
Finally,
Thank goodness.
something to use that
Yeah, good
for.
thing I'm still paying off the student loan. So here's the concept. Visual art tends to be the first thing through the door when it comes to a new cultural movement. Visual art loves to be on the cutting edge, on the bleeding edge, in the avant-garde. So when you're looking at a movement, you look to visual art, and then to film and television, and usually literature is one step before that, poetry, and then
Right,
and dance is up there. So it's like,
right.
usually, I mean, it's
And we know that because, like, if we seek to understand a certain time frame, we can look at the visual arts that happen in that time
yeah,
frame,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
to really understand those
And
movements. So,
eventually it does trickle down to variety arts.
right,
You see it in stand up. You see it trickle down into what's considered lower forms of art, even though I don't necessarily subscribe to that. And then eventually magic gets it. Magic gets that sentiment after a long while. So, for example, modernity. Modernity was the era of cultural understanding that happened post World War I. There was a sense of sentiment and generosity, this feeling that technology would solve everything, but people liked things that were sentimental, that were sweet. There was this sense of reverence, and like this real love for the modern, the new, the shiny metal things, and uh,
right,
and you see it in visual art. You see it in minimalism in visual art, and then you see it in music, and you see it in literature, and then you see it trickle down into plays, and eventually magic gets it. But magic didn't get it until Doug Henning and Copperfield, which is in the 80s. That's a long time. But if you look at those artists, they are extremely in that modern sensibility. They are sweet. There is a love of technology. Copperfield is vanishing airplanes. There's a sense of loving things to
right.
be sentimental, and this, like, Doug. You look at Doug Henning and you're like, I just want to hug you, and that's very much of
Hmm.
that modern movement. Now, the movement to come after that is postmodernism. And postmodernism was a response to modernity, which was to say, we're sick of all this sentimental stuff. We like cynicism. We like it to be cynical and self referential. And, we're just going to burn in the ashes and anarchy. And there's this sense. And we see it in art. We see this explosion of color and of odd techniques, and this drive towards it being about process driven work, very punk rock. And then we see it in our music, and we see it in our television. We see it in The Simpsons. The Simpsons is extremely self-referential, very
Yeah,
sarcastic. We see it in all of our art, and then eventually magic gets it with David Blaine and Chris Angel, and I could go on, the like, lots of, like, that kind of magic. That, and you look at the people I'm naming, the people who got into the public eye, because we want people that feel more.
how is that magic self-referential? I'm just seeking to
Oh, so
understand.
so if you look at Chris Angel, there is this sense of it that it's like, you know, it like they were making all of those like weird vampire movies at the time, and a lot of the stuff he does references other forms of
Right.
culture, and so
Right.
it's sarcastic. One of his
I see what
taglines
you
at the
mean.
time was "Magic's cool now," and you know, which is to say, magic wasn't cool. That's self-referential.
Right. And now it
Exactly. That
is.
that in of itself is a very self-referential tagline because in order for him to
Right.
make that, he must first know that magic is
It's this knowledge about magic and its place in time
exactly.
and its place in, yeah.
And so, and obviously there's a spectrum between those things. But what has happened, and I think that the TV show that does this the best right now is Rick and Morty, is that we've hit a new era, which we're just coming into. We're just squeaking into it. It exists already in visual art. You see it in poetry and song making. And now you're seeing it in television, and it's metamodernity, which is that we're exhausted by cynicism. Cynicism now feels dated. It feels like the 90s. It feels like, yeah, okay, we get it. Everything's crap. We get it. Move on. But we also can't handle things that are overly saccharine. We can't handle things that uh, are too cheesy. And so we want something that is self referential and irreverent, and then gives you a moment of honesty and authenticity, and then immediately takes it away from you. And Rick and Morty does that so, so well. And the magicians that are doing really well are magicians that have this balance of sentimentality and also irreverence. And so, again, Zabrecki, David Williamson, even Max Maven is irreverent and sentimental.
Right.
You see this wonderful mix of these two things. This recognition that we're in a phase of culture right now, this current cultural zeitgeist where we want to experience that range. We want to feel the pendulum swing of sarcasm and honesty and authenticity, and we want you to move between them in a way that is sensitive to the era, which is that too sentimental is cheesy and too irreverent is exhausting. That's what it feels like right now.
Whoa. Okay. Let me hold on one sec. My mind is blown. So let's backtrack so I can just fill in a few gaps. So the first thing, so the punchline here is that, you know, one of the what's happening right now in art, particularly one of the things that we're reflecting on in magic is what you're calling meta modernity, and it's this idea that we cannot, or right now, we don't like too much of either of them. We don't like too much of the actual sentimental and cheesy. Like right now, if you go back and watch a David Copperfield, you'll probably, roll your eyes more times than you would because it's like, oh my gosh, look how much he's talking about dreams and being a
But at the
child, right?
time, it was perfect.
Right. And then, we're not doing too much of that. And then right now we're also not doing too much of the, being self-critical about magic or self-referential. So things like, even things like, even though they're pretty up with the times, but things like Penn and Teller, Penn and Teller exist because of this, post-modern, right?
Yeah.
Because all they're doing is joking about magic and magicking about magic and about what we know about magic.
Have you seen their recent work?
No, I haven't. I'm only talking
they're
about.
They're so smart. They have sensed this change in the time. If you see them now, there is a sense of generosity in their work, and even the way that they do their TV show, they're kind, they're generous. Then they're not afraid to make jokes and goof off. Penn and Teller have, because they also have a love for jazz and visual art, have done a fantastic job of always staying right perfectly in the center of the current cultural zeitgeist.
Okay, so let me finish trying to put the whole thing together. That's okay. So we're not too much in that direction, but instead right now we're living in a time where people want to see both of them. So they want to see us bare our heart. They want to see us share parts of ourselves, be authentic, be real. But then they also want us to be joking, kidding, to be extra, to be more than that, to be not necessarily self-referential, but at least to be conscious of what we are doing and saying, right? We're not blind to our own performance. We exist with them. And that is the modern way of things. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, the way that I have been describing it, to really simplify, is modernity was about wanting to see the wise man behind everything. Postmodernity was about wanting to see the fool in everything.
Sorry, say it again. So modernity was about
Performatively was about wanting to see the wise man's view on everything, the wisdom
right,
and the love and the
right.
emotion. And then we wanted to play in the rebel. We wanted to see the fool. We wanted to experience art through the eyes of the fool. And now we want our fool to be a wise man.
Right. Okay, so I have one more question just to see clarity in understanding this more, because I don't understand a lot about art. I'm a math guy, so I'm trying to walk through this. So the first is you said we see this already in visual arts. So you mentioned Rick and Morty. Are there any other examples that you can give me where I
Totally.
can try to understand this a
American
little
Office,
better?
Parks and Recreation,
Right.
like,
Because they're both very
yeah,
heartfelty and very like
yeah,
funny or very whatever the thing
Avenue
is.
Q, uh, Book of Mormon, like, I could go on.
Right.
A lot of the
Right.
popular
Right.
work that is, I mean,
Right.
even I would say Hamilton. Hamilton is closer to the wise
Right.
man, but it's goofy and it's
Right. And
playful.
it's intentionally goofy and it's
It's
rap, and
rap,
that's
it's
on purpose.
irreverent.
That's intentionally playful, right? And that's intentionally clashes with
Mhm.
the way that it naturally is, right? So okay, so interesting. I really like that. And you think that right now magicians of the world are one step behind still, and we're all still acting like uh acting like which version? We're still acting like meta modernity, so we're still doing
Well,
what?
I think that's gonna be a different conversation for everyone. I think, what I've noticed is a lot of people have been coming up to me and telling me that they feel like they're 2 cultural reference points behind. Because I think a lot of people are doing the kind of magic that's like, "This is a ring. This ring was a ring I once thought of in a dream, and in
Right.
that dream I knew." And
Right. So that's two
that's
steps
2 steps
back.
back, and
Right.
so as a result
One
of what
step
that
back is
is,
what? What would one step back do with that
one
ring?
step back is, hey guys, everybody knows that magic is stupid. Magic's not cool. So I have this ring here. We're gonna do something crazy with it. Maybe it'll fool you, maybe it won't. Who cares? Magic is dumb,
Who cares?
you know. And
Right.
so, and I see both. I see that a lot in close-up magic. Young guys coming around and being and acting.
Better than the magic that they're
Exactly.
doing.
They're like, "I'm cool, but I guess I'm a magician, so I guess I'll do a card trick for you," even though card tricks are lame. And it breaks my heart because I'm like, card tricks aren't lame. Card tricks are
To be
amazing.
honest, I do that. I say that all the time. When I show a magician I know like magic, I'm like, here's something stupid. Like that's what I say. Like I guess it's just I'm just like here's something stupid. Like what do you like? What do you want? Like here's a stupid card trick. But it shouldn't be, right. It should be the
Well, I think
opposite.
you
It should be
can
like,
say it's a stupid card trick if at the end you're gonna go, "Yeah, but it's not stupid." Ah, but it
well,
is stupid.
that's the part that rocked our brains in the interview we did with Ed Kwan, where he told the story of Ed Marlowe talking to Alex Elmsley, and one of them said, Ed, like, don't you hate it that you could work so hard on that don't you hate it that this is a piece of you could work so hard on a piece of magic and someone could steal it. I think Ed said that, and then Alex Helmsley said, it's just tricks. And then Ed Marlowe said, but it's all I have.
Oh.
And I love that. And it's like, oh, and it just pulls on my heartstrings. Okay, so just to wrap up on that brilliant thing, meta modernity, is that what we should be seeking to do now is and there's two ways that I want to sort of share this. So the first is by the sort of the definitions that you were playing with, which is we want to be both authentic and sarcastic, right? We want to be both authentic and realistic. And the other thing that I want to say about it, which I think is is it allows us to draw a little bit into earlier in the episode, but we spoke about earlier this idea that people are much more in tune to faking and much more in tune to content and all these different things, and I think that is part of the thing that's bearing its head here in this meta modernity, which is that the real you, the real me is everything. I'm sentimental, but I'm also funny. But I'm also, if you have you ever been to a funeral? People laugh at afterwards. You're talking. Sometimes you laugh you're laughing, right? And that's not because the death is funny. It's not even because you were even talking about it. It's because we're rich individuals, right? And when art was starting, or not when art was starting, but rather when some of these mediums were exploding, it was easy to do things like make a big cheesy figure and have him stand at the top of a hill and have this, amazing show about him or whatever, whatever the thing is. But now we're human people, and expressing anything other than that, other than you being, a human, a multifaceted human, expressing anything other than that is really gonna butt into some walls there. Is that a knowledgeable, is that an understandable interpretation?
Absolutely,
there?
yeah. And I think there's another aspect of it too, where, I mean, the important thing to recognize is that this is what you are performing in magic is a visual artistic medium. And art has a couple of purposes. One, it's to communicate. So step one, what are you trying to communicate? And I think it should be more than just, I know something you don't know. Because if you're just trying to fool someone, all you are communicating is, I know something you don't know. And that's not that interesting. I know lots of things you don't know. You know lots of things I don't know. That's not, if every conversation was about that, it'd be tedious. So I want people to think about, like, what else do you want to communicate? What do you think about all the time? What piece of information do you want other people to go home with and know and really know, and that would give them a piece of social currency, a story they could tell someone else maybe. And then the other thing is that entertainment is a gift. Art is a gift. It is something I make as a gift for you. So it starts from something truthful in myself, something I desperately need to communicate, and then I paint it and I package it and I put a bow on it so that it's a gift that is palatable and consumable for you, for you to love it. Because as soon as I've decided what it is I want to communicate about me, I'm no longer part of this equation. It becomes about the audience. It becomes about what they want. And so this whole thing about metamodernity is talking about, where are we right now?
Right. How do we better reach where
What
people
do people
are?
want? I always say there's three things you can do with any expectation: meet, exceed, or subvert. And I feel like so often I see magic that just ignores expectation, and it does them no good, because immediately the audience knows that that person is either not paying attention, they're not really here, they're performing a script that wasn't for them. It was a script that was about that person's insecurity or that person's desire to be loved, but it hasn't been transformed to a place where it's about my insecurity as an audience member. It's about me. It's about my life and my experience. It's not really for me yet. It hasn't been finished. And like all the things we were saying about how we're such a visually literate culture, our audiences are so much more intelligent than we give them credit for. They are picking things up on a subconscious level. You and I talked a little bit before we started recording of this thing people keep talking to me about, it factor.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. So there's a little bit I wanted to say about it, because I know you have some strong opinions about an it factor. So I want to approach it from the perspective of the other side, because just, to put the cat out of the bag, you're not a big fan of the idea of an it factor, or, you got to have it, or, that thing, or that unnamed thing that people have. So I will let you very quickly, tell us what you don't like about the it factor. But then, let me vouch for the other side in hopes that you smash what I'm about to say to smithereens.
Do it.
Both because it's, something that I'm struggling with now, but also because hopefully it's something that other people are struggling with. So very quickly, right off the bat, the it factor is this idea that, you either have it or you don't. You're either born with it or you aren't. You either have these kind of skills or it's bad luck for you. Very quickly, how do you feel? Do you hate that? Do you love it? Why?
I just think it's a convenient lie we tell ourselves to afford people an opportunity to give up, rather than to recognize that entertainment is a skill like any other skill. The only difference is cooking is something you get better at in reasonable increments, whereas entertainment is something you get better at in a way that feels like random chance, because each step forward is not well outlined, and it is elusive and confusing. And I just think that this whole thing of it factor just gives permission for people to be lazy or to give up, because I promise I did not have it. It did not have it. I have videos of myself performing in my youth. I did not have it. And now that is the comment I get the most. Everyone that sees my act goes, it's great. It's got that it factor. And I just did a bunch of meetings where people were like, yeah, we want to do this thing with you. You just got that like star power. And I'm like, it's learned. It is a representation of skill and thinking. And
Right.
I could teach it to
Okay.
you.
So my heart feels what you're saying. My heart feels it. But here's my only thing in the other direction, and hopefully you can shred me to bits. But whether you believe in the lords or you don't, however many lords you believe in and whatever skills they have, the lords don't give out talent equally. And whether or not you are born with something, like, whether or not it's this like it factor of being born with, which I agree with you, making it so simple as yes, no, on, off, black and white, you really screw yourself. You really cut off any chance for anybody to be good by being like, oh, I don't have it, because obviously you're not good at performing before you ever perform. That makes no sense. So obviously, like I'm on board for the basics, but there is something which pangs me, which is there's taller, suaver people who sweat less, speak better, and really their first 100 times on stage look better than my first 1,000 times on stage. And that's not self, deprecating. That is just true. And while I think that we're lucky in magic, and we're lucky in magic because I truly, honestly, from the bottom of my heart feel that anybody could be successful, where if you just keep showing up and keep doing it, keep getting on stage, you'll build the act. Like we said earlier, you do it enough times, you'll figure out how to get the laughs. Like we're lucky in magic because that's not true about basketball. If you're not that tall, you probably won't make it, so we're very lucky in magic because I think that you could probably do it. But is there not something to be said about the fact that some of us just have to hack at this thing way harder than others, and some of us have some sort of bit of it, while others have way less of it, maybe it's not a black and white, but it is a meter, it is a gray meter. Like, there is talent involved in this equation somewhere, right?
Well, so talent is definitely learned. And this is a poison that comes from a lack of diversity in our industry. Because specifically what I anchored onto what you said was short and sweaty. That's Robin Williams, one of the most beloved human beings in all of entertainment. Short and sweaty. The sweatiest man you've ever seen. But Robin Williams was not trying to be Fred Astaire. But Fred Astaire was an amazing Fred Astaire and was one of the most beloved people for being Fred Astaire. The problem is that magic has created these specific archetypes. And you line yourself up and you go, which one do I pick? And then you go, well, I'm not that. So maybe I don't have the thing. Rather than looking inside yourself and going, what is it that I have to offer this industry that is unique and special that I could do better than anyone else? How can I be me so hard that people can't deny me anymore? That's all the it factor is. The it factor is being you so unapologetically and so hard that you fill the whole room up with it.
But you don't think, like, I agree with everything that you just said, and I think that Yes, and that was great. It is a great point about Robin Williams, and you're right. And I think that it is a problem of identity, you know, and me not trying to be, because obviously, um, if I just consider myself me, then I'm already there, and I'm not almost there. I'm just there already. So, like, you know, I agree with all of that. But let's talk about comedy for a second. Like, someone goes on stage and he was once a shy guy and he's not great on stage, and the other guy was a little bit more of an outgoing guy, and the first 100 attempts of the outgoing guy looks better than the first 1,000 attempts of that shy guy. Like, it takes him more to get out of his shell. Like, is there nothing about the fact that one of them, for whether or not it was nature or nurture, like whether or not the guy is more outgoing because his parents were outgoing or because he has an outgoing gene, you know, I don't care which one, but is there not something to be said that one of those people unfortunately had to try harder to reach the critical mass, you know, to be able to go up there, right? Like, it did it not hurt for the shy guy for more years than it hurt the other guy? You know what I mean? Like, like, this isn't all just about like uh you are yourself and it's all learned and trained and be a better version of yourself. Like, there is a struggle to this, right? It is
But everyone's
difficult.
struggle is going to be different. Like when you go up on, let's say you're whatever you in your imagination you have perceived to be the ultimate person, which sounds like from listening to you that it's this tall, not sweaty, handsome, confident person.
Well, listen, I'm not going to grow, okay?
I'm just
And I
saying
don't think I'm going to sweat any
that
less.
you have
But,
this guy in your head that exists who has it easier than you because he's handsome, but he doesn't, because being handsome is uninteresting.
or because he's more articulate, or because he's cleverer, or because he's, you
Right,
know, whatever.
but being articulate comes with a problem of not being an everyman. Like what specifically what you said is, isn't it harder for the shy person to be funny immediately? Emo Phillips. Emo Phillips is brilliant,
Right.
and Emo Phillips has been doing the act that way for a long time. And the truth is that even the outgoing guy has to learn that the way that he is funny in a party is not going to work on stage. And he's never going to learn the it, and it's in a way, it's going to be harder for him in a different way. It's harder for you up front, but it's going to be harder for somebody who has a lot of existing positive feedback, because the person who goes on stage
I
and goes,
agree. I agree with you. The only thing I'm saying is that I just don't think that it's all even.
it's not even. It's just
Right,
hard in
I
different
hear
ways.
what you're saying, right? Like I agree. Like the comedian struggles with a different part than the serious guy struggles. Like, you're right. There's no person is void of struggles in the entertainment industry. I just don't think it's even, right? And that's my only argument in this it factor thing, is that I just don't think that it's even. And there is something that it hurt less for this guy than it did that guy. Whoever the guy is, whether this one's the shy guy or that one's the shy guy, doesn't matter. But it's not even, right?
Yeah, I just think the hurt is what makes people interesting. I think if it hurt less for him, here's the thing. What makes me valuable as an artist is that my struggle is interesting and varied. And so it was very hard for me, but it means I can go further than somebody else because I have more to draw from. I think there's something to be said about, yeah, sure, for some people it was more automatic, but they're missing a richness that people who struggled harder have access to. An easy life, an easy go at anything, comes with a very known, uncompelling narrative. The more challenging your relationship to get, the more challenging it was for you to get to what you have now, the more interesting it will be when you share that story.
And that's something we know. We know that from many years of lives and storytelling and experience, and that's something that we know. So, you know, whether or not, I think that that's a good way to meet in the middle, which is whether or not you are really struggling with this or not struggling with performing or whatever the thing is, you know. And it is not fair, it is not equal. But I like what you said, which is, you know, you can count every moment that you're struggling as a point for you and not against
Mhm.
you. And instead of thinking that, oh darn, I have to struggle more than they do. You know, if you're in this for the long run, then you get to say, oh yes, I get to struggle more than they do. Right. And there's so many reasons why I feel that to be true. You know, there's so many reasons why, you know, I talk a lot with friends of mine about, you know, some people magic comes to sometimes some people, like we're saying, some people performing comes to very naturally, and some people performing comes to not very naturally. And it turns out that the ones that it comes to not very naturally, they write the best stuff.
Yeah.
Because they learn habits that it takes, because they're not satisfied with the first line because it wasn't funny, right? But the funny guys, it was funny. So the idea that it being harder for you is a benefit and not a pitfall is a place that I can feel comfortable with as a way to meet in the middle about this.
Yeah,
because
it's also important not to get too wrapped up in that Instagram lie too, where I think sometimes there's lots of people I've met over the years that I'm like, oh, you're just so naturally talented. And then those people are my friends and I realize, no, they're not.
Right, and there's also the problem
hard.
of the like overnight success where, you know, this was not always Rob Zabrecki, right? And for many years he didn't do magic. He was in a band. So there's this idea where we see someone and we're like, wow, I want to be that full of a character. And that's that full of a character because he's led that full of a life, you know, and you know, so there's obviously that as well. But I like it. And I think another take home, as well as the overcoming the struggle, but another take home, which I said briefly, but it's definitely a place where we really agree on this and is one that I would, you know, encourage more, is we are lucky in magic, which is that there's no tall or old white guy sitting in an office deciding who makes it and who doesn't
They're
make
limited
it.
gatekeepers.
You know, we don't have that, right. And we also don't have it such that the decision of your entrance into magic is defined by a metric. There are no metrics in magic. And the reason I bring that up is because there's people who are really good at basketball but don't make it because they're just not tall enough. Like, they're just not tall enough. There's people who are deciding, you know what, to play in this league, you really need to be taller to play in this league. Thankfully, we do not have that in magic. And I agree with you enough about the it factor thing to say that, like, you have enough of it to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it factor comes from just like, stop apologizing for everything you're doing,
Right.
and the ability to, you're never gonna get it by yourself is the other thing. I'm proud of where I am as an artist right now, but in order just to like feel comfortable accepting where I am, I have to spend like 20 minutes thanking people, because everything in my act was reflected. Everybody helped. Even if it's an act that I wrote by myself and is still pretty much in the state it was in when I originally wrote it, it's still been reflected.
You're still a sum of all of your influences.
Exactly. Like, people have helped me and coached me and just even helped me in a way by just being interesting, just being different, by just inspiring me to be like, oh, okay, that's an option and that's an option. And so, you know, if you allow yourself to really accept criticism well, if you surround yourself with people who you empower to give you useful feedback, and you're doing this genuinely as a gift to your audience and not for selfish reasons. If you've spent time understanding what it is that you want to communicate about your art, and then you look outside of magic for influences, you go to galleries, you go to dance shows, you see stuff and you also recognize that when you see something you don't like, that is valuable information. I think a lot of people see magic they don't like, or see art they don't like. You know, I feel bad because I always feel like this is something that happens when I'm in America. You know, they're just like, I don't like that. And I'm like, cool, why? I don't know. All right, well then what was the point of saying you don't like it? Like, it's fine.
Who does that help?
It's fine to not like it. That's great. You've learned something about your aesthetic and what you value. But you don't actually learn that if you just go, I don't like it, end of conversation. No, why?
Right.
Why don't you like it? How is that going to affect your work? So it factor is just is just about working really hard. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and someone's like, wow, you've got real star power. No, I don't. I worked really hard.
Right. Right. I
Yeah,
earned
what I
this.
have
Right.
is a
I'm
level of
not an overnight
polish
success.
that you
Right.
don't know how to explain any other way, because the level of
Right.
polish I have reached now feels like a kind of magic that we've decided we're going to use that word to articulate. But it's not actual magic. It just feels like magic. And I just am so sick of that whole concept, making people, like when I coach people, I'm overwhelmed how often I spend a lot of the coaching session being like, don't give up. You could do
Right.
great.
Right. You're a cheerleader and not a
Yeah,
coach.
exactly.
Yeah. There's one other thing that I wanted to chat with you about before we start wrapping up. And by the way, most of our episodes are usually an hour, and this has just been bonkers. Full of awesome advice. For me personally, and also, a lot of wisdom and just stuff that I keep thinking to myself like, wow, I'm loving this conversation, and people should really hear this. So it's all been really good. The last thing that I wanted to ask about that was on my list is I wanted to ask about Bubble You. And the reason I wanted to ask is because I feel like I hear so much about you and it doesn't come up, and it just came up somewhere in a thread, and I was like, what? I didn't know anything about this. What? This is incredible. What? And I read a little bit about it through Kidabra or something kids magic, in which I have my ear to the ground about. So just very briefly, or not briefly, whatever, just what is Bubble You? To tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, what a great transition. Yeah, it's sort of like my secret thing I did.
Oh,
No,
spoilers, sorry.
it's public. I've launched it, but a lot of people don't know that I've done bubble shows for the last 7-8 years. And now that Lucy is doing really well, I have less and less opportunity to do bubble shows, and I've been teaching a lot of people in Calgary. And it was a big part of my lecture because I've noticed that bubble shows in my community, and kind of on a nationwide, because you see it coming up in toy stores a lot, have become the new thing. In the way that face painting blew up a couple years ago, it feels like bubble performances are really on that line, because
Yeah.
bubbles have no gender. They're not a cultural thing. They're not associated with anything. They don't offend anyone. They're inherently whimsical. They teach science. They teach critical thinking. They're sort of like the tofu of entertainment. They take on the flavor of whatever's around it. So you can do a fairy
Right.
bubble show. You can do a Christmas bubble show. You can do a magic bubble show.
Right. You can do math. You can do
Exactly.
anything.
And what people don't realize is that bubbles are capable of doing some insane things. And they have this really unique property of being super easy to sell, because what would end up happening in my market is people call me and they'd be like, hey, I'm trying to decide between a magic show or a bubble show. What's the bubble show? And I go, oh, well, it's 40 minutes of impossible bubble magic. And then I put all the kids inside a bubble. No one's not booking that show.
That is
It's
over.
over.
Yeah, it's
My
over.
kid will be inside a bubble and I can put it on Facebook.
What do you mean my kid is inside of a bubble? That makes no sense.
Yeah, it's like a show that's a bit future proof, because, and then what happens is that people post that picture online and then everyone's like, whoa, is this? What's this show? I need to see it. And then you do, one for every kid in the room. And I've been I've been basically funding my life with these bubble shows. And now that Lucy's doing well, I have less opportunity to do it. And I decided I'm just going to give my show away. With the caveat of you got to pay for it. So basically it's a 4-month program. There's a video per week. You learn bubble sculpting, bubble stretching, all the bubble skills. You learn all of the show. It comes with scripts and material. We're just getting into this week the marketing side of it. It comes with original music that we wrote and images. Everything's video. There's a forum where you can talk, and it's become, I think we've got like 60 members now, but it's just a community for mostly magicians who want to have, like kids magicians who want to have a second product. Although we have 10 members that are not kids magicians who are just learning bubbles so they can put it in their gala shows, which is also great, because it's stuff like, well, the great thing about a bubble show as well is that parents don't keep talking, because once you pull out like bubble cubes and they're blowing bubbles into bubbles, they're blown away. It's the most amazing thing they've ever seen, and so it silences a room. It's such a fun thing to do. And I remember coming home from my bubble shows and thinking, how is this my job? But
I think about that with magic too.
it's so great. So yeah, Bubble You has a, oh, I just realized that the thing online has changed. It is online, and it's an online program, and once you pay, you have access to it forever. If you want, I can create a discount code for your listeners.
Sure. I mean, I have no idea if anybody's interested in bubbles, but they should be. And if they are, then yeah, they should absolutely get a discount code. And more than anything, just for my little endorsement of it, which I know nothing, but the little endorsement is this: you have done so many different types of entertainment from the stage that for you to say, here's a formula and sell it with the confidence I can hear you have, like you just tell them that you put everyone in a giant bubble and they book you, it sounds like this is a surefire thing. So if somebody is a kids performer and they're looking to add something really strong, from what I understand, this sounds like it's the perfect thing. So yeah, set up a discount code. And is there like a special like coupon code that should discourse?
Let's do discourse. Yeah, I was trying to figure out. Let's do discourse. So if you put in discourse, it'll give you $50 off at checkout, and it's a lifetime membership. And we're going to be posting stuff for basically on and off. We're doing basically like a 4-month thing at the beginning where we're doing videos every single week, and then we're going to do videos as needed after that, because otherwise it's so much content that it becomes actually hard to dig through. But there's 10 weeks of content up there right now, and videos and clips from my show, and I explain everything. And we're also doing a module at the end of the marketing module that will be all character, like creating characters for kids shows.
Love it. Definitely. That's something that people should go check out. So go use coupon code Discourse, and I'll make sure to make a link to it. What is it? Bubbleu.com.
It's nonsensekids.com.
Okay, good. Because I made up mine entirely. Nonsensekids.com. That's a great website. By the way, all of your website's great. Your email address was great. Big fan. Okay. The last section or segment is the rapid fire questions, which we'll try to take a little quicker than we usually do because we've taken our time with the rest of the episode, which is awesome. So few quick questions. The first is, what is something in 2018, 2019 Magic that you like, and something in 2018, 2019 Magic that you could do without?
Right now, there is this wonderful thing happening with Magic where we don't have as many big celebrities, but we have a lot of niche-y magic, which I love. I love that, with Derek Delgadio and Justin Willman and, there's all these like Shin Lim. Yeah, it's a great example. Is that stuff is becoming a little bit more niche-y so that it's giving people permission to be more weird and more them. And like Dan Sperry is a good example of that, where like I saw Dan Sperry in The Illusionist and I was like, okay. And then I saw him do his own show in Vegas recently and I was like, yeah, yes, you made all these choices. You're happy. I love it. And I'm really enjoying that. I'm really enjoying these people who are choosing to make work that is very specific and the success they're getting from that. And then the thing I don't love is that recently I've noticed that because of the way that magic is being commodified, a lot of people are doing these shows that are this revolving door of the top 10 list on Penguin, the top 10 best-selling tricks. And so, everybody's doing color match, everybody's doing Bolorama, everyone's doing, just and
yes,
preach. And it's just like, I mean, if something on there genuinely resonates with you, yes, buy it and do it your way and crush it so hard that it's awesome. But if that is your artistic practice, that you go once every 2 months, I go on here and I buy the new stuff. Maybe it's worth taking a step back and going, why are you here? What do you love about magic? What is it you want to create?
And if it's just a business, and become a manager.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just doing this because you don't think there's anything else you can do, you're wrong. So really take some time and go, yeah, I'm doing this because I love fooling people this way. Okay, great. Well, then don't just buy the top 10 list. Seek out effects that really do that well.
I like that. And one of the things that I like about your perspective is you seem to keep taking the idea of being an artist quite seriously, in terms of, what it means to be an artist, but more specifically, like, there seems to not even be a question about the whole point of it being creating your act, right? And doing your, and like putting together and writing your act and and anything else, whether it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. It just, it feels like to you seems ludicrous, which is good, right? It's a good perspective on it. The next question I wanted to ask is the magic PSA. So one thing to warn or tell the world of magicians, what do the magicians of the world really need to know?
There's no such thing as it factor.
There's
no such thing as
what?
it factor. There's no such thing as star
It
power. It doesn't exist.
I love it.
That what people are trying to do is put language is a form of communication, but it can also be a trap because it oversimplifies complex concepts. And what you are looking at when you see star power is specificity, careful choices, originality, and a human being being authentic. And those are things you can choose. Those are things you can learn to do. It is not a magic thing. It is a set of choices.
I love it. That's amazing. The next is the question of the week. So each week we have our guest recommend, our guest give a question of the week, and it can either be a question that you want to hear everyone's answer to, and we will clip out the question and post it on Instagram, so you will be able to see their answers. But it can also be a question that you want them to ask themselves, an introspective question. So the floor is yours. What question do you want to ask the magicians of the world?
I would like magicians to ask themselves how they want magic to be remembered. How right now magic is something that is for nerds. It is something not cool. And that's how people see it. That is the current cultural zeitgeist. And there was a time when it was for gentlemen, and there was a time when it was about powerful celebrity. And what do you see as the next phase? What kind of artists do we become next? How do we and it's not about how we get there. It's about dream big. Do we become the tellers of stories? Do we become visual artists? Do we become about the impossible? What kind of art do we be perceived as making in the future?
I love it. That's awesome. And the second last one is, in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, and officially the reason why you're here is each guest recommends another guest to be on the podcast. So who must we absolutely have on the podcast?
Oh no, I didn't see this coming. Darn. Oh, this is a good question. Have you had Christopher
if you
Barnes?
name 3 or 4 or 5.
Okay,
we have not.
Christopher Barnes is amazing. He's going to be he is the next biggest thing in kids entertainment. He does like stand-up comedy for kids with magic. It's very compelling.
Done. I'm very interested.
Wonderful artist. Christopher Barnes is wonderful. Just truly, truly wonderful. Really interesting. Have you?
And I'm in the process of bringing Joe Diamond on. Joe Diamond is great.
So. You should definitely have Joe Diamond on. That is a must. An absolute must. I'm trying to think who else. Have you had Zabrecki on yet? Okay, yes, of course. Well, then that's not a good recommendation.
No, but listen, you gave us one. That's what we're looking for, so I'm happy. And the last and final thing is, people have been listening to this
Alba? Have you had Alba?
Go ahead.
You need to have Alba.
No, I have
Alba's
not.
the best. Alba
Amazing.
Is like the sassiest lady magician from Buenos Aires, and she's got so many opinions, and she's so talented, and she's great. Okay, I'm sorry.
Perfect. That's a good. No, that's perfect. It's 2 to add to the list. The last aspect is sort of a take home point. So people have been listening to this episode for over 2.5 hours now, I think. They are, or it's just the 2 of us. But regardless, it's been going on for this long, whether or not they've been listening. But 2.5 hours, and they've been doing a lot of things. They've been washing dishes and walking their dog, and maybe going to sleep to the soothing sounds of our voice. But if there's one thing for them to take from this entire thing, what would it be? So I'll mention first my one thing, and then I want to hear yours, and hopefully I don't pre-steal the one that you will be thinking about. But for me, there was a lot of different aspects. The one that really is going to tickle me is the meta modernity, and just thinking about how to represent magic in 2018, 2019, because clearly it's wrong. clearly the ones that we're seeing right now are outdated, and really trying to get a grounding as to what makes sense for the years right now is something that I'm very excited to hold on to. So that was really interesting to me. What was a take-home point, maybe a most important glimmering thing or highlight for you?
I think for me, they just to talk about how, magic is a very specific form of communication. Why are you a magician? Why? It's you're right. It's not a sport. It's an art, and I think part of what we've been saying this whole time is, it's not about deciding whether or not magic is an art form. It's about deciding whether or not you're a successful artist or not. If you're pretending it's not an art form, you're probably not making successful work unless you're just inherently great at it, which is totally possible. But really starting to look
Right.
at this and going, this is a tool, this is a form of communication, and when you walk on stage, recognize that this is a gift for those people. This might be the only fun thing they get to do all month. For some people in your audience, it is very hard to get a babysitter and to go out and to be there. This might be the best thing that's going to happen to them this month, so you better deserve that.
This is their chance to laugh. Don't fuck it up.
Yeah, be better.
Right? This is their chance to make them laugh. I love that. That's awesome. And with that, Carisa, this has been one of the best episodes we've ever done. I want to give you
I'm
a
sure you say
big,
that to
huge
all the
thank you
girls.
for. No, I know. I really don't. And you can tell because all our episodes are usually an hour. So I had plans to go out and get a burger, but I skipped all those plans because this was way better. So a big, huge thank you to you for joining us. And I have the biggest compliment of all for you, which is I hope one day we get to work together, because you keep saying wise stuff that blows my mind. And I would love to work together, work on the same team as you for something. Yeah. So that's the best compliment I can give somebody. And with that, a big, huge thank you to everyone at home for listening to however many minutes or hours of this that you did listen to. And of course, we will see you all next Thursday. Thanks so much for being here.
Having me.
Well, there you have it. I hope that you learned something from that episode, and I hope that you put some things into action. I know that it was a long episode, but a few different things to put into action. Number one, trying to make your community one that is more open and welcoming. Number two, thinking about how modern your magic is in terms of art, and how you have made it more 2018, your magic in general. And the big one to think about, which is how to make your magic more artistic. Not necessarily more impossible. Maybe the impossible part is not the hard part. The hard part is to make it more artistic, and how to do that. So those are some fun things to focus on. I hope that you liked the episode, and I will see you next Thursday. Peace.